"Nolan deserves this garage," my mother said. She stood between us in the third bay, one hand pressed flat to the hood of a primer gray Camaro, as if she were protecting it from me. Behind her, a pegboard held rows of polished wrenches. Above it hung a wooden sign that said, "Nolan Mercer's Motor Works." I could smell brake cleaner, cold coffee, and the lemon cake she had brought for the shop's anniversary. "The garage I paid for?" I asked. "You paid rent," Mom said. "He built something." My brother stared down at the concrete. Grease had settled into the lines around his fingernails, the way it always had with Dad. The lease expired in 90 days. The renewal packet was folded inside my duffel bag at Mom's house, already marked with yellow tabs where I was supposed to initial and sign. Until that moment, I had planned to do it. Mom's face softened, which somehow made it worse. "He stayed, Dana. You had your career. You got to see the world. Nolan gave up his best years for this family." I looked at him. "Do you believe that?" He rubbed the back of his neck. 36 hours earlier, Nolan had hugged me so hard my sunglasses fell off. "There she is," he said, lifting me half an inch off the ground before setting me down. The prodigal sister. That's not what prodigal means. It means you finally showed up. He grinned, and for a second he was 22 again, leaning over Dad's lawnmower with a socket wrench in one hand and absolutely no idea what he was doing. I had driven straight from the airport in a rental truck that smelled like artificial pine and somebody else's cigarettes. My luggage was still in the bed under a blue tarp. I'd been awake for almost 20 hours, but Nolan had insisted I come to the shop before going to Mom's. "You need to see what we've done," he'd said on the phone. "We?" The new sign was the first thing I saw when I turned off Route 6. Nolan Mercer's Motor Works was painted in black and red across a white aluminum panel. Underneath, in smaller letters, it said "Foreign and Domestic, Honest Work at a Fair Price." The old sign had simply said Mercer Motor Works. I had designed it on a government computer during a quiet night shift in Germany, using a free font that made the M look like a pair of mountain peaks. Nolan had complained that it looked like a dentist's office. I told him dentists usually paid their electric bills. Now my name was technically still there. It just belonged to him. "You like it?" he asked. "It's bigger." That's what Shay said. A horn sounded from the road. Nolan turned and waved at a passing plumbing van. "You know everybody now?" I asked. "Everybody worth knowing." He picked up my sunglasses, wiped one lens with the bottom of his t-shirt, and handed them back smudgier than before. The building looked better than it had in the photographs. Nolan had repainted the block walls a deep blue, replaced the cracked front windows, and built a narrow counter in the office from old barn wood. The waiting area had 4 mismatched chairs, a coffee machine, and a television mounted so high on the wall that watching it probably counted as a neck exercise. An older man at the counter glanced at me. "This the famous sister?" he asked. Nolan slapped my shoulder. "Dana, this is Frank Delaney. Frank's truck has been here so often I'm thinking about charging it rent." Frank laughed. "Your brother saved my transmission last winter. He replaced it?" "Rebuilt it." I looked at Nolan. "You rebuilt a 6L8, oh?" Try not to sound shocked. "I'm not shocked. I'm wondering who helped you." He put a hand over his heart. "Still mean. The military didn't fix that?" Frank looked between us with the pleased expression of someone who had accidentally arrived for live entertainment. Nolan's humor had always worked that way. He put the bruise in first, then smiled so you felt petty for noticing. He led me past the first bay, where a white work van sat on the lift, then through the second, where a transmission occupied a rolling jack. Both bays were cleaner than I expected. The tools were organized. Work orders hung from metal clips. A red line had been painted across the floor to mark the customer area. I felt an inconvenient flare of pride. Then we reached the third bay. A Camaro sat in the middle, hood off, windshield dusty. Fishing rods leaned in one corner beside a tackle box. A green kayak hung from straps overhead. Along the back wall stood 3 tall cabinets with Nolan, stenciled across them in white. I waited for him to explain. He didn't. "Whose Camaro?" "Mine." "You bought a Camaro?" It was $800 and mostly rust. That doesn't answer the question. It's an investment. So is tetanus, apparently. He laughed, but his eyes moved toward the office. I walked around the car. The third bay was the brightest because I had paid to run a separate electrical panel to it. I had chosen that bay for fleet diagnostics. There was space along the east wall for a workbench, and the side door opened onto a gravel strip, wide enough for service vans. Dad and I had measured it together during my first visit after the lease started. He'd been thinner then, his flannel shirt hanging loose from his shoulders, but he still argued with my numbers. "You're allowing too much room," he'd said. "For what? For mistakes?" "That's where you put room." He had smiled at that. Nolan came up beside me. "I can move the fishing stuff. And the car? When it's running? When will that be?" He tilted his head as if listening to a noise only mechanics could hear. "Depends. I'll need the bay by the 1st of next month." His smile stayed, but it stopped reaching his eyes. "For what?" I thought he was teasing. "For work, Nolan." "You just got home." "Yes. You're not taking a week off? I've had 2 months to plan. From Germany. They have phones there now." He glanced toward Frank, who was pretending to study a candy machine. "We'll figure it out," Nolan said quietly. That phrase had traveled through our family for years. "We'll figure it out" meant I would make a spreadsheet. Mom would call 3 times, and Nolan would wait until the solution arrived. Shay walked in carrying a cardboard drink tray. She wore hospital scrubs under a denim jacket, her dark hair twisted up with a pen. "Please tell me one of you is Dana. I'm hoping it's me." She set the drinks down and hugged me. Shay gave good hugs. Brief, solid, no performance. We had met twice in person and spoken dozens of times over video calls, usually when Nolan forgot something important and she needed to find out whether I knew where it was. "You look exhausted," she said. "Nolan asked me to admire him before I slept. Then you'll be here a while." She handed me a coffee with my name written correctly on the lid. Nolan picked up the largest cup. "That mine?" "No, it's for the other man who leaves engine blocks on my side of the garage." He grinned and kissed her cheek. Shay allowed it, though she was looking at the Camaro. "I thought you were clearing this bay." "I am. When?" "Soon." "Interesting unit of time," I said. Shay looked at me, then at Nolan. Something passed across her face too quickly for me to name. Mom had put clean sheets on my old bed but left the room otherwise untouched, which would have been sentimental if she hadn't converted half of it into storage. My military awards were stacked behind a sewing machine. 3 framed photographs leaned backward against the wall, facing nothing. "You can sort through those whenever you want," she said. She stood in the doorway with her arms folded, wearing the red cardigan she kept for occasions she wanted to appear cheerful at. "I thought I'd stay a few weeks," I said, "just until I find an apartment." Her mouth tightened. "A few weeks? I told you that. You said you were coming home." "I am home. You know what I mean." I sat on the edge of the mattress. "What do you mean?" Mom picked invisible lint from her sleeve. "I assumed you'd want some independence." "So did I. That's why I said a few weeks." "Well, of course. We'll make it work." There it was. On the dresser sat a photograph from Nolan and Shay's wedding. Mom had framed it in silver. Beside it was a smaller picture of Dad in front of the garage, holding an oversized pair of scissors at the opening day ribbon cutting. Nolan stood on one side of him. Mom stood on the other. I had attended on a laptop propped on the office counter. Someone kept setting cups in front of the camera. Mom followed my gaze. That was a happy day. Dad looked good. He was having a good week. Neither of us mentioned that I had paid for the ribbon, the food, the new shirt Dad wore, and the first 3 months of rent. Mentioning money in my family was considered crude when I did it, and necessary when they needed it. Mom brightened. "Tomorrow night, we're doing a little anniversary gathering at the shop. Nolan mentioned cake. Nothing fancy, just people who supported him in the beginning." I looked at the photograph again. Should I wear my laptop? She blinked, then laughed a second too late. That night, while looking for a charging cable, I found the renewal packet in my duffel. The property owner had mailed it to my military address before my separation. The rent was going up by $200 a month, but the terms were otherwise unchanged. My name appeared on every page. I had already placed yellow tabs beside the signature lines. I ran my thumb over the first one, thinking about the Camaro in my bay. Then Mom called from the kitchen. "Dana, Nolan wants to know if you can look at the shop computer tomorrow. It's doing something strange." "What kind of strange?" A pause. "He says it won't turn on." I closed my eyes. "Did he plug it in?" Another pause, followed by Mom covering the phone badly and asking him. A moment later, she called back. "Never mind, he fixed it." I slid the packet beneath a stack of T-shirts and zipped the duffel shut. The anniversary gathering began at 6 and was supposed to be small. By 6:15, there were 20 people in the garage. Frank Delaney came with his wife. The owner of the plumbing van brought a case of beer. Someone placed a crock pot of meatballs on my future workbench. Nolan moved through the room easily, laughing, shaking hands, remembering which carburetor belonged to which man. He was good at being liked. It wasn't fake, exactly. Nolan genuinely enjoyed people. He just enjoyed them most when they reflected back the version of himself he wanted to see. Mom tapped a plastic fork against her cup. "I only want to say a few words." Nolan groaned theatrically. "Here we go." Everybody laughed. Mom stood beneath his new sign. 6 years ago, my son took an empty building and turned it into this. My coffee suddenly tasted metallic. He had just lost his father, but instead of giving up, he stayed. He worked. He took care of me, and he built a business this town can be proud of. People nodded. Nolan looked embarrassed in the exact way a person looks when he wants praise to continue. Mom lifted her cup toward him. "To the son who held this family together." I waited. She looked directly at me, smiled, and added, "And we're certainly glad to have our world traveler back." That got another laugh. I set my cup down carefully. An hour later, after the last guest left, I asked Nolan when he planned to clear my bay. Mom stopped cutting the leftover cake. "My bay?" Nolan repeated. "The third one." He glanced at Mom. She put down the knife. And then she told me who deserved the garage. "Not because you wrote checks," Mom said. "Because he put his hands on it every day." The plastic cake knife was still in her hand. Pink frosting clung to one side of the blade. I looked at Nolan. "Do you believe you deserve it more than I do?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I think this is a bad time. There were meatballs on my workbench 10 minutes ago. When would be better?" "Dana," Mom warned. "No, it's fine." Nolan bent to pick up an empty beer bottle near the Camaro. "She's been home one day. She's tired. Everything's got to be military direct with her." I watched him drop the bottle into a trash bag. "How much is the monthly rent?" He tied the bag tighter than necessary. "I don't know the exact number. You've operated here 6 years. You handle the lease. How much is the insurance?" His jaw shifted. "The electric bill?" "Depends on the season. Give me last month." "Jesus, Dana." Mom moved the cake behind her, as if the argument might contaminate it. "Why are you interrogating him?" I asked 3 questions about his business. "He fixes cars." "He doesn't sit behind a desk all day." "Neither do I." "You know what I mean." I did. She meant that numbers belonged to me because I had always made them disappear. Nolan tossed the trash bag near the side door. "The shop is working. Why come home and start tearing it apart? I asked you to clear 1 bay. You can't just take 1/3 of my capacity. I leased 3 bays with the agreement that 1 would be mine when I came home. That was 6 years ago." "Yes, I noticed. Things changed. For you." He stared at me, breathing through his nose. Nolan had Dad's angry face, which was unfair. Dad's anger had usually burned off quickly, leaving him embarrassed and eager to repair whatever he had said. Nolan's could sit warm for days. Mom touched my forearm. "Let's all sleep on this." I stepped away from her hand. "The lease ends November 30th, I said. "I'm not renewing it." The fluorescent light over the second bay buzzed. Nolan's mouth opened, then closed. Mom actually smiled, a small disbelieving smile, like I had threatened to cancel Christmas. "That's ridiculous," she said. "The owner sent the renewal packet. I'm not signing it. You can't make a decision like that because your feelings got hurt at a party." I made the decision because Nolan just told me an agreement stops mattering if he benefits from breaking it. I didn't say that, Nolan said. You said things changed. Here's another change. He walked toward me, stopping close enough that I could smell beer and motor oil. You would shut down a functioning business over one bay? I'm not shutting it down. You can take over the lease. With what notice? 90 days. That's nothing in commercial real estate. You didn't know the rent 5 minutes ago, but now you're an expert in commercial real estate? His laugh came out sharp. There she is. Who? Technical Sergeant Mercer. Everybody stand straight. My old title sounded strange in his mouth, both too formal and somehow filthy. Mom set the knife down. Your brother stayed here while your father was dying. The sentence landed with the ease of something she had practiced. Nolan's eyes flicked toward her. Mom. No, she needs to hear it. You weren't here, Dana. You visited. You sent money. Nolan was the one helping him out of bed. Nolan drove him to appointments. Nolan sat with me in that hospital. I know. Do you? Yes. Then try having some gratitude. I looked around the garage, at the lift I'd bought after 3 weeks of night shifts, at the electrical conduit Dad and I had argued over, at my brother standing in the bay that had waited for me until it became useful to him. I have gratitude, I said. What I don't have anymore is a lease. The side door opened behind Nolan. Shay came in carrying the last trash bag from the folding tables outside. She looked from his face to mine, then to Mom. What happened? Dana's having a moment, Nolan said. I'm letting the lease expire. The bag slipped against Shay's leg. Bottles knocked together inside. What? November 30th. Why? Because apparently this is Nolan's garage and he deserves it. Mom made an exasperated sound. That is not what I said. It was close enough that even Nolan looked at her. Shay set down the bag. Okay, everybody stop. Nolan can put the lease in his name. Exactly, I said. He turned on her. It's not that simple. Why? The terms might change. The terms are already changing. That's what renewals do. He looked at me as if I had planted her there. Shay folded her arms. You said Dana was being repaid. The room changed shape. Nolan went still. I said I was handling it. You said the business was paying her back. Mom looked between them. Paying her back for what? Nobody answered her. Shay's voice became quieter. Dana, has he been paying you? I've gotten a few transfers. How many? Shay, Nolan said. She didn't look at him. How many? I could have given her the exact number. I could have named the dates and amounts. 7 transfers in 6 years, totaling $4,800. The last one had come 14 months earlier with the note shop share, followed 2 hours later by a text from Nolan asking if I could send half of it back because the water heater at Mom's had failed. Not enough to call it repayment, I said. Shay closed her eyes. Nolan dragged both hands down his face. We are not doing this here. Where have we been doing it? She asked. Don't make it sound like I lied to you. You told me the rent came out of the business. It does. It comes out of Dana. Mom stepped closer to Shay. Honey, Nolan has worked himself sick keeping this place going. I know how hard he works. Then don't gang up on him. Shay's expression tightened. I'm not ganging up on my husband. I'm learning what my husband told me. Nolan kicked lightly at the leg of a folding chair. It scraped across the concrete. This is exactly what she wants, he said. I almost laughed. I wanted an empty bay. No, you wanted to walk in and have everybody salute because you paid some bills. Some bills? See? There it is. You can't help reminding everybody. I haven't reminded anybody for 6 years. That's not true. Every time something comes up, you get that tone. What tone? The one where you already know the answer. Right now, Nolan, I'd settle for you knowing the rent. He grabbed his jacket from the office chair. Shay said, Don't leave. I need air. We're in a garage. Open a door. Despite everything, a laugh escaped me. It was quick and ugly. Nolan stared at me. I'm glad this is funny. It wasn't. He shoved his arms into his jacket and walked out through the middle bay. The overhead door was still open, and his boots crunched across the gravel until the sound faded. Mom began gathering paper plates. "Now look what you've done." Shay picked up her purse. "Marlene, don't." Mom stacked the plates faster. "I'm not allowed to say anything in my own family anymore." "It's not your garage," I said. She dropped the stack. One plate rolled under the Camaro. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Mom took her cardigan from the back of a chair and went after Nolan. Shay stayed by the office door. Her shoulders had dropped, but her face looked hard and awake. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "I don't know yet." That was the most honest thing anybody had said all night. At Mom's house, the kitchen light was on, but her bedroom door was closed. I could hear the television through the wall, louder than she normally kept it. Some game show audience applauded a washing machine. I opened my duffel and took out the renewal packet. The first page included the new monthly rent, $2,050. The increase wasn't outrageous. The property owner had repaired the roof the previous spring and replaced the failing water line. I had expected it. At the bottom of the page, beside the yellow tab, my signature line waited. I pulled off the tab. It came away with a soft paper sound that felt much louder than it was. I didn't sleep much. Around 2, a car door shut outside, followed by Mom's voice in the hallway. Nolan's answered in a low murmur. I could not make out the words, only the shape of the conversation. His hurt, her reassurance, both of them speaking as if I were a weather system that had damaged the house. In the morning, Mom had made bacon. This was not forgiveness. Bacon was how she made silence look hospitable. She stood at the stove in her robe and moved the strips onto a paper towel without looking at me. "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks. You always take it black now?" "For about 12 years. Well, I don't see you every day." I poured a cup. "You could ask." She turned off the burner. "I shouldn't have to interview my own daughter." "No, but conversation helps." Mom sat across from me. She had slept badly, too. Without makeup, she looked smaller, though not softer. "Nolan came by, I heard. He's devastated. He can apply for the lease. He doesn't have your credit. He has 90 days to figure out what he has. You enjoy saying that, I don't. You always did like deadlines. Even when you were little, everything had to be organized. Shoes lined up, homework finished. Nolan was different. Is this where you tell me he has a good heart? He does, so do I." Her eyes lifted to mine. I don't know why I said it. It sounded childish the moment it left my mouth, like I was asking her to divide dessert evenly. Mom looked down at her hands. "I never said you didn't. You don't have to." She pushed back from the table. "I'm not fighting before breakfast." "Then don't. You're staying in my house. I can leave." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Mom carried her plate to the sink. "You always do." By 9, I was back at the garage with a clipboard, blue painter's tape, and 2 cups of coffee. Nolan's truck was there, but the front sign was turned to closed. He was in the office with the lights off. I placed 1 coffee beside him. "Peace offering?" he asked. "Caffeine." "Black." "You take cream." "People change." Apparently. He turned the cup slowly between his palms. On the desk lay a pile of unopened envelopes, 3 work orders, and a photograph of Dad sitting on an overturned bucket. The photo had been taken inside the empty garage before we repaired it. Dad was pointing at something outside the frame, probably telling one of us we were doing it wrong. I set the clipboard down. "I'm making an inventory," I said. "Then I'll give you the owner's number." Nolan stared at the photograph. "You really won't sign?" "No. What if I clear the bay?" I looked at him. He finally looked back. There it was, not an apology, not understanding, just the first offer made after he believed the consequence. "No," I said. "We're past the bay." Nolan leaned back in the office chair. It squealed under him. "What does that mean?" "It means clearing a bay because you're scared isn't the same as honoring an agreement. So now I have to honor it retroactively?" "No. You have to take responsibility for your own business. I do that every day. You didn't know the rent. I know it's paid." I stared at him. He winced almost imperceptibly, hearing it after it was too late. "Yeah, I said. You do? I left him in the office and started with the first bay. The clipboard had 3 columns: item, purchase source, disposition. I wrote slowly, checking serial numbers where I could. Nolan appeared after a few minutes and followed me with his coffee. What's the tape for? Anything I'm taking gets a blue tag. You're taking equipment while I have customer vehicles here? No. That sounds like what you're doing. I'm taking it after you relocate or the lease ends. He looked at the roll in my hand. And I'm supposed to trust that? I tore off a strip and placed it on the diagnostic scanner. You trusted me to pay rent. That's different. I agree. The scanner was mine. So were the battery tester, the refrigerant machine, 2 rolling jacks, and the heavy steel workbench currently holding the crockpot ring from the night before. Nolan had bought most of his hand tools, the tire changer, and a battered red welder he claimed was temperamental because it had artistic standards. We reached the lift in the first bay. I wrote down the model number but didn't tag it. Nolan noticed. You bought that? I know. You leaving it? If you take over this lease or find another location by the deadline, yes. His suspicion didn't relax. Why? Because moving it will cost almost as much as it's worth, and you need it. Don't do me favors. It's not a favor. It's a practical decision. You love calling things practical when you want everybody else to shut up. I looked at him over the clipboard. Would you prefer I take it? He walked away. The compressor was next. I left that untagged too. In the second bay, he stopped me from tagging a gray socket set. Dad bought those. I bought them for Dad. He gave them to me. When? Before he died. I waited. Nolan's face tightened. You think I'm lying? I remembered Dad sitting at Mom's kitchen table, turning one of those sockets in his fingers. It was a professional set, better than anything he had owned when we were growing up. I'd mailed it for his birthday. He had called me at 3 a.m. Germany time because neither of us had calculated correctly. I also remembered him saying, Nolan'll get good use out of these someday. I pulled off the blue tape. Then they're yours. Nolan blinked. He had been braced for a fight and seemed almost disappointed not to get one. You don't want proof? Do you have proof? No. Then I'm choosing to believe you. He glanced toward the office where Dad's photograph sat on the desk. That's supposed to teach me something? No, it feels like it. That's probably exhausting. He gave a short laugh before he could stop himself. For half a second, we were us. Then he remembered we weren't supposed to be. I called the property owner from the gravel strip outside. His name was Russell Haynes, though everyone called him Russ. He owned the garage, 2 storage buildings, and a narrow strip of retail property near the highway. I had met him 3 times in 6 years. Our relationship mostly consisted of him emailing invoices and me paying them. He answered on the 4th ring. Dana Mercer. Welcome stateside. Thanks, Russ. How's the roof holding? Dry so far. Best kind of roof. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the hood of the Camaro. Nolan stood with his arms crossed. I won't be renewing in November, I said. Nolan may want to apply for a lease in his own name. Russ went quiet. All right, he said finally. Wasn't expecting that. Neither was I, Nolan muttered. Russ heard him. Nolan there? I'm here. You want me to send you an application? What's involved? Standard financials, credit check, business statements, security deposit. I'd need proof of insurance in your name instead of Dana's. Nolan picked at a spot of dried paint on the Camaro. Same rent? New rate is in the renewal packet. Can you tell me what that is? Russ told him. Nolan's eyebrows jumped. That's a pretty serious increase. It's $200 per month. That is generally how rent works, Russ said. I looked away so Nolan wouldn't see my mouth move. Russ continued. I'm not promising approval, but I'm happy to look at it. You've kept the place in decent shape. Decent? Nolan said. I rebuilt half this building. Dana cleared the improvements with me. I did the work. And she paid for the materials, I said. Nolan jabbed at the screen and ended the call. That was professional, I said. You didn't have to put it on speaker. I wanted you to hear everything. You wanted Russ to hear us fighting. We weren't fighting until you hung up on him." He grabbed the phone from the Camaro and pushed it against my chest. "You're humiliating me one person at a time." I took it. I told him you've maintained the place. After telling him you're walking away. "I am walking away." "Then walk." The front bell rang. A man in a green plumbing company jacket stood at the counter holding a key ring. I recognized him from the anniversary gathering, though I didn't remember his name. "I know the sign says closed," he called, "but I've got 3 calls backed up and no van." Nolan's entire posture changed. His shoulders lowered, his expression opened. "Come on in, Mike, I've got you." He walked into the first bay and lowered the white van from the lift. His movements were quick and sure. He checked the drain plug, wiped the underside of the pan, then brought the vehicle down without wasting a step. Mike looked at me. "You're the sister." "Still. He talks about you all the time." Nolan's head snapped up. "Only good things," Mike added. "That doesn't sound like him," I said. Mike laughed and handed Nolan a credit card. Nolan waved it away. "Invoice is on the seat. You can pay Friday. You sure? You need the truck." Mike slapped his shoulder. "This is why I come here." After he drove off, I looked at Nolan. "What?" "Nothing. Go ahead, say it. You're good with people." He seemed more offended by that than anything else I'd said. "I'm good at my job." "Yes." "And you're still closing me." "No, I'm ending my part." To me, that's the same thing. That's the problem. Shay came in just before noon carrying a black 3-ring binder. She had changed out of her scrubs, but the pen was still in her hair. She placed the binder on the office desk. "What's that?" Nolan asked. "Bank statements." He stared at her. "Why?" "I want to understand the business." "You've never wanted to understand it before." "I thought I did." "Can we not do this in front of Dana?" Shay looked at me. "Would you mind giving us a minute?" "Not at all." I took my clipboard and went to the 3rd bay. The Camaro's removed hood rested on padded stands near the wall. Underneath it, I found a blue shop towel wrapped around one of Dad's old ratchets. I heard Shay close the office door. Their voices remained low at first. Then Nolan said, "Because I was trying to protect you from this exact nonsense." Shay answered, "You don't protect me by lying about what we owe. It's not your debt. We're married. Dana never asked to be paid back." The office became quiet. He was right. I had never demanded repayment. In the beginning, the plan had been for him to cover more expenses as the business grew. Then Dad worsened. Then funeral costs arrived. Then winter was slow. Then the transmission failed in Mom's car. Every delay had a reason, and most of the reasons were real. That was what made the pattern so hard to see while I was inside it. Shay opened the door. "Did he ever tell you he was paying you $1,200 a month?" she asked. Nolan stood behind her, red-faced. "No." "Did you receive $1,200 a month?" "No." "For the last year and a half?" "No." She nodded once, as if confirming a lab result she already understood. "Shay," Nolan said, "I told you the business was covering the garage. You let me think that meant rent. It covered expenses. Which ones? Parts, utilities, payroll when I need help. Your sister covered rent and insurance. I covered everything else, with customer revenue. That is how a business works." He looked at me. "You enjoying this?" "No." "You could tell her we had an arrangement." "We did." "See? Then you stopped following it." Shay picked up the binder. "I co-signed the tire machine because you told me the largest overhead expense was already handled. It is handled. Until November." She walked out. Nolan went after her but stopped at the front door. "You don't get to blow up my marriage, too," he said to me. "I didn't tell her anything you told me not to tell her. That's a cute answer. It's the true one." He pointed at the clipboard. "Finish your inventory and get out." I finished at 1:40. 23 items had blue tags. 15 would stay if Nolan relocated. Everything else was his, including Dad's socket set. I left a copy of the list on the office desk beside Russ's phone number. Nolan had gone somewhere. His truck was still outside, so I assumed he was walking off his anger or looking for Shay. I locked the office out of habit, then caught myself and used the key Nolan had given me 6 years earlier. It no longer fit. I tried it twice before noticing the lock was newer than the one in my memory. When Nolan came around the side of the building, I held up the key. "When did you change this?" "A couple years ago. Why didn't you send me a new one?" He shrugged. "You were overseas." I set the old key on the windowsill. At Mom's house, my duffel and boxes were exactly where I had left them. I stood in the bedroom doorway longer than I needed to, looking at the framed photographs behind the sewing machine. Then I called an extended stay motel near the highway. The woman at the desk quoted a weekly rate that made the increased garage rent sound charitable. I booked 2 weeks anyway. Mom appeared while I was carrying my first box downstairs. "What are you doing?" "Getting some independence." Her face changed. "Don't be dramatic. I'm not. The room is half storage, and you don't want me here. I never said that." You paused. "What?" "When I said I could leave." She gripped the banister. "You're really going to punish me over a pause?" "No, I'm listening to it." I carried the box past her. Outside, my phone rang. Nolan's name appeared on the screen. I answered because some habits take longer than 1 day to break. His voice was flat. "Russ sent the application." "Good. It asks for 3 years of business tax returns. That sounds standard." "I don't have 3 years." I stopped beside the rental truck. "What do you mean? You don't have them?" "I mean, I need your help." "What kind of help?" "I don't know yet. That's not an answer. I have personal returns. The business stuff is different." "Different how?" A truck passed behind me, loud enough that I missed his first response. "What did you say?" "I filed an extension. For this year and last year." I set the box in the rental bed. An extension is not a filing strategy. I know that. Do you? Can you not talk to me like I'm one of your airmen? I never had an airman go 2 years without closing his paperwork. Congratulations. Do you have an accountant? I had a guy. Is he still alive? He stopped returning my calls. That's not normally a sign the relationship is going well. Nolan exhaled into the phone. "I need somebody to organize it." "You need an accountant. I need it organized before I take it to an accountant. Otherwise, they charge more. Then organize it." Dana. I leaned against the truck. Mom watched me through the front window, arms folded beneath the curtains. "I will help you make a list of what you need," I said. "I won't prepare tax returns, sign anything, or guarantee the lease. I didn't ask you to guarantee it. Not yet. Forget it." He hung up. Mom opened the front door before I reached the porch. "What did he want?" "You should ask him. He's upset. He's also 36. You say that like adults stop needing family. No, I say it like family shouldn't mean one person does the needing and another does the fixing." She stepped aside so I could get the next box. "I suppose they taught you that overseas. They taught me not to keep repairing equipment for someone who refuses preventive maintenance. I'm not a truck, Dana. Neither is Nolan. Trucks come with manuals. My old room looked barer with the duffel gone." I picked up the framed photographs from behind the sewing machine and placed them in a box. Mom hovered in the doorway. "You're taking all of those?" "They're mine." I was keeping them safe. They were facing the wall. I needed the shelf. I lifted the photograph of Dad at the ribbon cutting. "Do you want this one?" Her mouth pressed into a line. "No." I put it in the box. The extended stay motel had beige siding, brown carpet, and a lobby aquarium containing one exhausted-looking fish. The woman at the desk gave me a key card and a warning that the laundry machines only accepted quarters, as though this were confidential intelligence. My room had a kitchenette with 1 fork, 2 spoons, and a saucepan small enough to be decorative. When I turned on the air conditioner, it coughed and released a smell like wet pennies. I lined my bags against the wall. Then I noticed what I was doing and left one crooked. It bothered me for 11 minutes. My laptop connected to the motel Wi-Fi on the 3rd attempt. I opened the folder I had been building for the fleet maintenance business. Vendor quotes, insurance estimates, a list of local companies operating between 5 and 20 vehicles. A draft schedule based on having one permanent bay and access to two more when Nolan's shop was quiet. I deleted the schedule. The rest stayed. Before leaving Germany, I had spoken twice with Renee Bishop, who owned Bishop Fleet and Tire 27 miles away. We had met through a virtual small business program for veterans. Renee had spent 8 years as a Navy engineman and another 11 telling people she had not worked on boats in the vague way they imagined. She answered my call with, "If this is about extending my vehicle warranty, I already died. It's Dana Mercer." That's less exciting. "You home?" "Yes." "How's the family garage?" "Complicated," meaning, "I no longer have access to a bay. Did it burn down?" "No." "Then somebody's lying to somebody. I'm letting the lease expire." Renee was quiet for a beat. "That sounds expensive." It already was. She didn't ask for the story. That was one of the reasons I liked her. "I may need lift time," I said. "Temporary, paid." "What kind of work?" "Fleet inspections, brakes, suspension, diagnostics. No body work, no overnight teardowns without approval." "You insured?" "I have a binder pending. I can activate it this week." "Tools?" "Enough once I move mine." "Customers?" "Potential ones. So no, not yet." Renee made a thoughtful clicking sound with her tongue. "I've got Sunday afternoons and Thursdays after 6. Maybe Tuesdays if my alignment guy stops volunteering for overtime and then complaining about it." "What's the rate?" She told me. It was more per hour than I wanted and less than a permanent bay would cost. "I can come by tomorrow," I said. "You can come by today. I don't rent space to voices." Bishop Fleet and Tire occupied a narrow brick building between a cabinet warehouse and a fenced lot full of landscaping trailers. The sign out front was sun-faded. One of the garage doors had a dent shaped like somebody's bad judgment. Renee met me beside a silver pickup on the alignment rack. She was short, broad-shouldered, and wore safety glasses on top of her head, even though she had another pair over her eyes. "You're taller than your video square," she said. "You're friendlier. I can fix that." She walked me through the shop. 2 lifts, 1 alignment rack, a tire machine, and a storage cage with a padlock the size of a fist. Everything was clean without being pretty. Chalk notes covered one wall. A handwritten sign above the office coffee maker said, "If you finish it, make more or learn to run." "You'd use lift 2, Renee said. "You clean it when you're done." "You damage something. You tell me before I find it." "Customers don't wait inside unless you enjoy letting strangers use your bathroom." "What about parts delivery? Your account, your name, your problem." "Waste oil?" $50 a month if you use my tank." I nodded. She stopped beside a rolling toolbox. "You don't need to keep agreeing. I'm not lowering the price. I wasn't asking. Most people ask without using words. I'm not most people. Everybody says that right before behaving exactly like most people." A mechanic at the tire machine snorted. Renee looked me over. "What happened to the family garage?" "Wrong question. What's the right one? Can I make money with the hours you have?" Her mouth tilted slightly. "Maybe." She offered me a 30-day trial contingent on proof of insurance and payment each week in advance. No partnership, no shared sign, no favors. It was the cleanest offer I had heard since coming home. I shook her hand. On the drive back, I passed a used commercial vehicle lot and slowed enough to annoy the driver behind me. A white Chevrolet Express sat at the end of the front row. Rust had begun around the rear wheel wells, and the passenger side mirror was held together with black tape. The price written on the windshield was low enough to be suspicious and high enough to hurt. I kept driving. At the motel, Shay was waiting near the lobby aquarium. She had changed back into scrubs for a night shift and held 2 paper cups. "I guessed coffee," she said. "You guessed correctly." She handed me one. "Do you have 10 minutes?" We sat at a small table beneath a framed photograph of a lighthouse nowhere near Ohio. The exhausted fish drifted behind her shoulder. Shay wrapped both hands around her cup. "I'm not leaving, Nolan. I didn't ask you to. I know. I'm telling you because I don't want this turning into some conversation where you think I'm asking permission. I don't." He lied to me. "Yes." He also sat with my mother for 12 hours when she had her hip replaced and I couldn't get off work. He once drove 4 hours in a snowstorm because I left my passport at home. He can be generous in ways that make absolutely no sense. That sounds like him. And selfish in ways that make even less. That also sounds like him. She looked at the aquarium. He's convinced himself the garage was his payment for taking care of your dad. He told you that? Not in those words? Nolan rarely says the ugliest version out loud. I took a sip. Mom does it for him, usually. We sat without talking for a moment. Then she said, I need the real numbers. For the lease? For everything you paid? Why? Because I need to know what reality looks like before I decide what to do with it. I'm not presenting him with a bill for 6 years. I understand. I'm not asking you to pay me. I understand that too. Her voice had a clipped edge now. I recognized it as the sound of someone being denied facts for her own supposed protection. I gave her the rent amounts, the insurance premiums, and the total of Nolan's 7 transfers. I did not include Mom's utilities, Dad's medical travel, the funeral, or the replacement water heater. Those belong to other promises. Shay listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stared down into her coffee. He told me he'd taken over the rent 18 months ago. He didn't. Not once? No. She nodded slowly. He did increase what the shop paid him around then. I said nothing. I'm not asking you to react, she said. Good, because your face is doing enough. My face is tired. Your face wants to court-martial him. That isn't how court-martial works. There, that face. I almost smiled. Shay stood. He'll ask you for help again. He already did. Are you going to? I offered to make a list. That's more than I would have offered today. She left for work. I went upstairs and called an accountant whose office Renee had recommended during one of our earlier conversations. The earliest appointment was in 9 days. I booked it under Nolan's name and texted him the details. He responded 3 minutes later. I thought you weren't fixing this. I typed 3 different answers and deleted all of them. Finally, I wrote, an appointment is not a fix. He sent back a thumbs up, which from Nolan could mean thank you, screw you, or I refuse to continue this conversation. That evening, he called again. I found 3 boxes, he said. Of what? Receipts. In the storage room. Sorted? He laughed without humor. If they were sorted, I wouldn't be calling. I looked around the motel room. My photographs were still in their box. Dad's ribbon-cutting picture lay on top. I'll give you 2 hours tomorrow night. 2? Yes. I have 6 years of stuff. You have tonight to begin. He was quiet. Dana? What? If we get the application together, will you reconsider the lease? No. Then why help me? I picked up Dad's photograph and wiped dust from the silver frame with my thumb. Because helping you stand up isn't the same as letting you lean on me. He didn't answer. When the call ended, I set a timer for 11 minutes and left one of my shoes in the middle of the floor. I tripped over the shoe at 5:13 the next morning and nearly knocked myself into the kitchenette. The experiment had proven whatever it was going to prove. I put both shoes neatly against the wall. By 7, I had activated my liability policy, emailed the certificate to Renee, and paid the first week for lift access. At 8, I called the number on the Chevrolet Express at the commercial lot. A man named Denny answered. If you're calling about the white van, it runs perfect, he said. Then why is the mirror taped on? Mirror's not part of the engine. I'll be there at 10. Somebody else is looking at it at 9:30. Then sell it to them. He paused. 10's fine. The van did not run perfectly. It ran with an intermittent misfire, a power steering whine, and a front-end vibration Denny described as a road feel thing. The rear doors opened only if I pulled the left handle while kneeing the right door below the window. Denny watched me connect my scanner under the dash. You a mechanic? No, I'm here for the cup holders. He was a round man in a tan windbreaker with the Lots logo stitched over his chest. He smiled without deciding whether I was funny. The price already reflects condition. The price reflects your hope. I checked the frame, Crawled under the front and found oil dampness around the pan. Nothing catastrophic. The rust was mostly cosmetic. The transmission fluid smelled tired but not burned. The misfire came from one cylinder, likely a coil, plug, or injector. The tires had enough tread to be legal and not enough to be comforting. Denny folded his arms. "You want to drive it?" "I want service records." He gave me a look usually reserved for people who asked restaurants to meet the chicken. "We don't have service records." "Then I want $1,200 off." "Absolutely not." "Then I don't want to drive it." I put my scanner back in its case. Denny followed me 3 steps toward the rental truck. "I could do 400, 8, 5. New mirror. 600 and you buy your own mirror." I looked at the van again. White paint, no shelving, scraped rear bumper. A faint rectangular shadow on the side where another company's lettering had been removed. "Hold it until this afternoon," I said. "Deposit?" "No. Then I can't hold it." "You didn't have somebody at 9:30. He sighed. "I'll hold it." At 6 that evening, the garage office floor was covered in paper. Nolan had made an effort. 4 cardboard boxes sat in a row labeled parts, utilities, equipment, and other. Other was the largest by far. A 5th box held unopened mail, takeout menus, and a socket extension. I picked up the extension. "I couldn't find it," he said. "It was filed under finance." I panicked. Shay sat at the desk with the black binder open. She wore jeans and one of Nolan's old hooded sweatshirts. Her hair was down, which made her look less severe until she spoke. He put tire receipts and utilities. "Tires are essential," Nolan said. "That isn't what utilities means. Utility means usefulness." I set my phone timer for 2 hours. Nolan watched me do it. "You actually set a timer?" "Yes. That's psychotic. That's measurable." We started with bank statements. The business had more revenue than I expected and less cash. Nolan could point to almost every large deposit and tell me which repair had produced it. He remembered engines, customers, and symptoms with perfect clarity. Dates escaped him. Payment terms were vague. He had written paid on some invoices without noting whether the customer had used cash, card, or barter. "What did Frank Delaney pay for the transmission rebuild?" I asked. Nolan leaned over my shoulder. $2,800. The parts invoice is $2,160. Sounds right. You made $640 before shop supplies and your labor. I was helping him out. You worked on it for 3 days. He's been coming here since we opened. That doesn't improve the math. Shay turned a page in the binder. "You told me that job was a good one." It was. For Frank. Nolan stood and walked to the coffee machine. "If I charged dealership prices, nobody would come here. Nobody asked you to," I said. "But you can't price jobs based on whether the customer tells a sad story. Everybody has a story." "Exactly." The oldest unpaid invoice belonged to Mike's Plumbing Company, $4,300 across 9 jobs. I tapped it. "You handed him a van yesterday." "He pays." "When?" "When his customers pay him. You're financing his business with mine." Nolan turned. "Yours?" "The garage expenses I cover. You said you were done holding that over me. I said I was done paying them. Those aren't the same." Shay read through the invoice list. "There's almost $19,000 outstanding. Some of that came in." "Where?" "I don't know." "Another statement?" She stared at him. "I fix the vehicles," Nolan said. "That's what I'm good at." "I never claimed to be an accountant. You claim to own a business," I said. He pointed at me with his coffee. "You think because you've got folders for everything it makes you better. No, it makes the folder better. What does that even mean? It means this isn't about whether you're a good person. Your receipts don't care." Nolan dropped into a chair. For the next 40 minutes, we built a list of receivables. He argued over every name. Frank was retired. Mike was waiting on a commercial payment. A woman named Jo had recently lost her restaurant lease. One customer had repaired Mom's porch steps in exchange for brake work, which Nolan had not mentioned to Mom because he wanted her to think he did it. "You told me you spent a whole Saturday on those steps," Shay said. "I supervised. You brought him lemonade. It was hot." I looked down so they wouldn't see me smile. There was something almost tender in Nolan's bad decisions. He wanted to be the man who said yes. He wanted every customer to leave believing he had saved them from someone colder. He gave away labor, delayed invoices, and made promises with money that belonged to the next month. He was generous in the way people could afford to be when someone else covered the floor beneath them. At 7:15, Cal Boone came through the side door. Cal worked 3 days a week at the shop. He was 58, narrow as a fence post, and had a silver mustache that made every expression look skeptical. I knew him from photographs Nolan sent, though we had never met. He stopped when he saw the paper. "Tax season come early?" "Family season," Nolan said. "Worse." Cal took off his cap and nodded to me. "You must be Dana." "I must." He looked at the blue tape on the refrigerant machine, then at the lists on the floor. "Nolan said you were inventorying." "Nolan says a lot of things," Shay muttered. Cal did not ask what was happening. He walked to a drawer, retrieved a set of keys, and placed them on the desk. "Mercury's done. Customer'll get it in the morning." "Thanks," Nolan said. "You get your hours written down?" "Always." "Good." Cal hesitated. "You all right for Friday?" Nolan's eyes shifted toward me. "Yeah." Cal held his gaze another second, then put his cap back on. "Night, then." After he left, I asked, "What happens Friday?" "Payroll. You have enough?" I said I did. To him, to everybody. Shay closed the binder. "Do you?" Nolan rubbed his forehead. "If Mike pays." I looked at the timer. 23 minutes remained. "You need to call every overdue account tomorrow. I'm not harassing customers. Asking people to pay for completed work isn't harassment. Easy for you to say. Yes, that's why I said it." He gave me a tired look. The fight had drained out of him, leaving something closer to fear. What if they stop coming? Then the people who weren't paying will stop not paying. That's cute. It's arithmetic. The side door opened again. Mom entered carrying a foil-covered casserole dish. She saw the office floor and stopped. "What is all this?" "Paperwork," Nolan said. "You've been here all day. Have you eaten?" "We had sandwiches," Shay said. Mom ignored her and set the casserole on the section of desk we had just cleared. I made chicken and rice. Nolan lifted the foil and looked inside. "Thanks, Mom." She turned to me. "Did you find your new home satisfactory? It has an aquarium. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. The fish seems depressed." Shay made a small choking noise and pretended to cough. Mom removed 3 plates from her tote bag. "Only 3. Nolan noticed. "Mom." "What? Dana's here?" I assumed she had plans. "I do." I checked the timer. 14 minutes. Mom looked at the phone. "You're timing how long you'll help your brother." "I'm timing the 2 hours I offered." "What happens when it rings? Do you turn back into a pumpkin?" "I leave." She opened a cabinet harder than necessary and found another plate. "You know," she said, "your father would hate this." The sentence settled over the receipts. Nolan stared into the casserole. I said, "Which part?" "All of it. Be specific. He wanted you two to have each other. He also wanted Nolan to charge enough for break jobs." Mom's eyes sharpened. "Don't use him to make a point. You brought him up because somebody has to remember what matters." My timer sounded. The electronic chirp was absurdly cheerful. I stood and gathered my notes. Mom's face changed. "You're actually leaving?" I said I would. Nolan still needs help. He has a list, an accountant appointment, and 2 adults in the room who understand that receipts don't belong under other. Shay raised a hand. 1 adult. Nolan almost smiled, then caught himself. I handed him the list. "Call the overdue accounts. Separate personal expenses from business ones. Find the missing bank statements. Do not invent numbers to make the application look better." "I know that. I'm saying it anyway." Mom started spooning casserole onto plates. "Sit down and eat first." "No thanks." "You have somewhere more important to be?" I thought about the white van sitting under fluorescent lights on Denny's lot. "Yes." Nolan followed me into the 3rd bay. "You're buying something," he said. "What makes you think that? You get a face when you're about to spend money." What face? The one Mom gets before replacing an appliance. That is insulting on several levels. What are you buying? A service van. His gaze moved toward the blue-tagged equipment. With what tools? My hand tools. I'll build from there. You said you weren't taking anything until the lease ends. I'm not. You could work out of here. No, the bay's still available if I clear it. We've covered this. He shoved his hands into his pockets. You'd rather pay a stranger. Yes, that hurt him. I saw it happen. Why? Because a stranger gave me terms she intends to honor. His jaw tightened, but he nodded once. I left before either of us could soften it. Denny had the van parked by the office. The black tape on the mirror fluttered in the wind. You're late, he said. 7 minutes. I almost sold it. No, you didn't. He held out the keys. $600 off. No mirror. I signed the paperwork and paid from the savings account labeled house. The balance dropped low enough to change what kind of house I could eventually buy, if I could buy one at all. 6 years of garage rent had already done most of that work. The van simply made it visible. It started on the second try. As I pulled out, the engine stumbled, caught, and settled into a rough idle. There was no company name on the side, no shelving inside, and no guarantee I could turn it into anything more than another expense. For the first time since I came home, the key in my hand fit something that was mine. The van died at the second traffic light. The engine cut out so cleanly that for one hopeful second, I thought I had turned the key by mistake. Then the driver behind me leaned on his horn. I put on the hazard lights and restarted it. Runs perfect, I muttered. The van coughed, caught, and carried me another 4 miles before the check engine light began flashing. I pulled into a gas station, connected the scanner, and confirmed the misfire was worse. Driving it farther risked damaging the catalytic converter, which would turn an affordable problem into a 4-figure one. I called Renee. You bought it, she said after I described the symptoms. I did. Voluntarily? Yes. You inspect it first? Yes. So you purchased a known bad van and now want sympathy. I want to use the lift I rented. You rented Thursday evening and Sunday afternoon. It is Thursday evening. There was a pause. I like you less now, she said. Get it here. The tow cost $140. Renee watched the van come off the flatbed with her arms folded. That mirror is excellent. It was included. Generous. She went home at 8 after showing me the alarm and making me sign a second form acknowledging that I was in her shop without an employee present. I stayed until midnight. The misfire was a failed coil and a plug worn wide enough to qualify as optimism. I replaced all the plugs because changing one bad item in an aging system was how people ended up stranded twice. Then I found play in the right outer tie rod end and a cracked sway bar link. By the time I finished my inspection, I had covered 2 pages. I slept at the motel for 4 hours, returned to the parts store when it opened, and spent another $700. The van needed tires, but I postponed those until I had revenue or fear overcame arithmetic. When Renee arrived, I was tightening the tie rod end. You know there are cheaper ways to avoid spending time with your family, she said. I tried a motel. This is better lighting. She examined the old parts on my cart. You do good work, thank you. Don't get sentimental. You still owe me for the waste tank. I aligned the front end with Renee's supervision because her rack was different from the equipment I had used in the service. She corrected me twice and enjoyed both occasions. At noon, my phone rang from an unfamiliar local number. This Dana Mercer? A woman asked. Yes, my name's Beth Morrison. I manage transportation for Willow Creek Assisted Living. You left me a message about fleet inspections. I set down the wrench. I did. Our regular shop is backed up. I have 6 vans that need quarterly checks, and I can't send all 6 away during the week. I can inspect them Sunday at your facility. You mobile already? I looked at the white van above me, one front wheel hanging off. Yes. What do you charge? I gave her the number I had calculated in Germany, then wondered if I had just ended the conversation. Beth said, That includes reports? Yes. fluid conditions, tire measurements, fault codes, brake estimates where accessible, and prioritized recommendations. Our regular guy writes good or bad on a carbon form. I can do that too, but the price stays the same. She laughed. Sunday at 1. After we hung up, Renee said, "You're not mobile. I will be by Sunday. You don't own shelves. I own bins. Bins become projectiles. I'll strap them down. Projectiles with seat belts." I lowered the van. The first payment Nolan collected was from Mike's Plumbing Company. He texted me a photograph of the deposit receipt with the message, "Happy now?" I responded, "Is Cal covered Friday?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. "Yes, good," I wrote. Nolan sent another message. "Mike acted like I accused him of theft. You asked him to pay an invoice. Same thing to some people." I smiled despite myself. By the following week, he had collected just over $8,000. Not all of it was cash. Frank Delaney arranged monthly payments, and Joe from the restaurant traded part of her balance for catering the shop's next customer event. I told Nolan accepting more catering for an event that did not need to happen was not collecting money. He sent me a photograph of a tray of lasagna. I did not respond. Shay attended the accountant appointment with him. I knew because she texted me from the waiting room. He brought the other box. "That may save time," I wrote. "For whom?" "The archaeologists." She replied with a photo of her middle finger. At the motel that night, I found 2 voicemails from Mom and one from Aunt Celia, Dad's older sister. Celia lived in Indiana and had the family habit of calling only after hearing information she distrusted. I called her first. "Your mother says you're evicting Nolan," she said. "Hello to you too." "Are you?" "I don't own the building, so no." "She says you canceled his lease. He never had one." Celia made a thoughtful noise. "That sounds like a technical answer. It's an accurate one. They can be both." I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the single crooked spoon in the kitchenette drawer. Housekeeping had moved it. "I paid the lease for 6 years, I said. "I told him I won't renew. He can apply himself." "And can he?" "That's his responsibility. I didn't ask whose responsibility it was." I closed the drawer. "He has an application in progress. So this is a boundary." "Yes." "Your mother says it's revenge. Mom says my time in Germany was sightseeing. She says stupid things when she's frightened. That doesn't make them less stupid." "No." Celia paused. "It does make them less about you." I leaned back against the wall. "I'm not changing my mind. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking why this is the first time I've heard you paid for the place. Because it wasn't a family referendum. You let Nolan take credit." "I didn't let him." "Did you correct anyone?" "I was overseas. They had phones there." I checked. I laughed once. Celia continued, "You always make silence look noble, Dana. Then you get angry when people fill it with whatever story suits them. That doesn't excuse them, no. But it leaves you lonely and correct, which is your favorite miserable combination." "You called to insult me?" "I called because your mother is editing history, Nolan is hiding from math, and you sound like you're reading from an operations manual. What would you like me to sound like?" "Like it hurt." I looked at Dad's photograph on the motel dresser. "It hurt." Celia's voice softened. "There you are." After we hung up, I listened to Mom's messages. The first asked me to come to dinner. The second said Nolan's accountant wanted records of the original improvements and accused me of withholding business documents because I had not returned her first call. I texted Nolan directly and asked what he needed. "Material invoices if you have them," he wrote. "Accountant says they may affect depreciation." I had digital copies. I sent them to him within 10 minutes. Mom called immediately. "So you'll answer him. He asked for something specific. I asked you to dinner. That wasn't in the second message. You know, a mother shouldn't have to make an appointment to speak to her daughter. A daughter shouldn't have to call an accountant to learn what her brother owes." She went silent. I regretted the sentence and did not take it back. Mom said, "I can help with the rent increase." "With what money? My pension?" "No, it would only be until Nolan gets caught up." That is what I said 6 years ago. He was grieving then. So was I. You weren't here. The old sentence, sharpened and returned. I gripped the phone. I'm going to hang up now. Of course you are. I ended the call before she could hear my breathing change. On Sunday, I pulled into Willow Creek with 4 plastic bins strapped to the van floor, a folding table, and magnetic signs that said, Mercer Mobile Fleet Service. The signs had bubbles under the letters because I had applied them in the motel parking lot at midnight. Beth met me beside 6 beige passenger vans parked in a row. She was in her 50s, with a silver braid and a phone clipped to her belt. She handed me keys on a numbered board. I need all 6 available by 4. I'll tell you what I can do after the first 2. I was quoted 3 hours. For inspection. If I find a safety issue, that vehicle doesn't become safe because the clock says 4. She studied me. You always this encouraging? Only before coffee. The first 2 vans needed fluids and filters. The third had a left rear tire worn to the cords along its inside edge. From outside, it looked fine. Beth crouched beside me as I pointed it out. That was replaced last year. The tire isn't the cause. Something in the alignment or suspension is. Can it run tomorrow? Not with this tire. I have appointments scheduled. I understand. Do you? Yes. It still can't run. Her mouth flattened. I expected an argument. Instead, she stood and called a tire company. You military? She asked after arranging emergency service. Air Force. My regular guy would have checked the outside tread and called it good. He might not have had time. You trying to defend your competition? I'm trying not to pretend one mistake explains a person. Beth looked at me for a moment. That sounds expensive, too. I finished at $440. After fuel, supplies, lift rental, insurance, and the tow, the job did not put me in profit. It made the hole shallower. I drove back to Bishop Fleet to unload. Nolan's truck was parked outside. He stood beside my van, holding a replacement mirror. Salvage yard, he said. $25. I can pay you. I know. He held it out. I took it. How'd the appointment go? I asked. Accountant says the business is fixable. That's good. He also says my credit's a problem. That's less good. Nolan nodded toward the van. Need help with the mirror? I can install a mirror. I know. We stood there with the boxed part between us. Then he said, Russ denied the application. I looked at him. Already? Incomplete records, late personal payments, not enough cash reserve. Pick one. I'm sorry. His laugh was quiet and bitter. No, you're not. Yes, I am. He looked toward Renee's darkened shop. Mom says you knew he'd deny me. I didn't. She says that's why you won't renew. You get to act generous because somebody else does the killing. Nobody is killing anything. Easy for you to say. You've already got another garage. I have 2 rented evenings and Sunday afternoons. You always land on your feet. No, Nolan. I just stopped waiting for you to clear a place for them. Nolan looked at the boxed mirror in my hands. Russ said he'd reconsider with a guarantor. There it is. What? The thing you hadn't asked me yet. I'm not asking. You drove 27 miles on a Sunday night to tell me. I drove 27 miles to bring you a mirror and accidentally mentioned the one signature that would solve your problem. His mouth tightened. You wouldn't even have to pay anything. That is not what guaranteeing means. I'm not going to default. Then you don't need me. I need credit history. That's not the same as money. It becomes money if you stop paying. You think I'd do that to you? I set the mirror box on the van's passenger seat. You didn't know how much rent I paid. That's not defaulting. You told your wife the business was covering it. I never asked you to guarantee anything before. You didn't have to. I was already the name on the lease. He paced toward Renee's dented garage door, then back. Fine, I'll put it in writing. You get the 3rd bay. I pay the full new rent. If I'm late once, you walk. No. Why? Because it still leaves me tied to a business I don't control. You don't need control. I need distance. You've been home 3 weeks, and in 3 weeks I've learned that you don't file on time, don't collect on time, don't price your work correctly, and don't tell Shay the truth when you're embarrassed. That accountant said the business was fixable. Then fix it. With a lease. Somewhere else. He laughed bitterly. You think garages grow on trees? I think you had 6 years in one. Here we go again. No, Nolan, here we stop. He stared at me long enough that I could see Dad's temper moving behind his eyes. Then he picked up the mirror box. Where are your sockets? In the van. Get them. I told you I can install it, and I told you I know. He replaced the mirror in the parking lot under the light from my phone. The salvage part was blue, which made the van look like it had borrowed an ear from another animal. Nolan complained about the connector design, dropped one nut inside the door, and spent 10 minutes fishing it out with a magnet. Neither of us mentioned the lease. When he finished, he adjusted the glass toward my face. There, he said. Now you can watch yourself leave. That's almost poetic. Don't tell anybody. I tried to hand him $40. He refused. It cost $25. I know. You said $25. I lied. It was $40. Then why did you say $25 so you'd take it? I held out the money again. He closed my fingers around it. Not everything has to be an invoice. No. Apparently, some things become 6 years of confusion. He flinched. I regretted it immediately. Nolan wiped his hands on his jeans. Good night, Dana. He drove away before I could decide whether an apology would repair this sentence or only make me feel better for saying it. Renee opened the shop door behind me. You two always communicate like hostage negotiators. You were listening? You were in my parking lot for 40 minutes. I considered charging rent. She looked at the blue mirror. Terrible color. It was free. That's often the most expensive kind. I turned to her. She held up both hands. I'm going home. Beth hired me for monthly inspections and called 2 days later about a delivery company with 5 vehicles. The delivery company hired me for one afternoon, argued with every recommendation, and paid 3 weeks late. Willow Creek paid in 10 days and sent me a thank you note signed by Beth, who had underlined the word thorough twice. I taped it inside the van where the old company logo had left its shadow. The van developed a new noise near the rear axle. The motel air conditioner stopped cooling unless I kicked the cabinet below it. My first set of magnetic signs blew off on Route 6 because I had attached them over a layer of road dust. Success, at that stage, mostly meant discovering problems in a more interesting order. I found a 1-bedroom apartment over a laundromat on Maple Street. The kitchen floor sloped toward the refrigerator, and every Tuesday the whole place smelled like dryer sheets and hot quarters. The landlord asked for first month, last month, and a deposit. Writing the check took most of what remained in the house account after the van. The apartment had no furniture except a card table Renee sold me for $10 after insisting it was worth at least $12. I slept on the same narrow mattress I had used in Mom's house, moved over in the rental truck with no assistance, because asking Nolan felt complicated and asking Mom felt impossible. Aunt Celia called while I was assembling a metal bed frame. Your mother says you moved into a slum. It has windows. She also says you're too proud to let anybody help. I accepted a used mirror. From Nolan? Yes. How very intimate. I tried to pay him. Of course you did. I tightened a bolt harder than necessary. Did you call for a reason? I'm visiting next weekend. Marlene wants everyone at dinner. I have work. On Saturday night? I can arrange some. You could also show up and make her say things to your face instead of letting me hear them for you. I've heard plenty to my face. Then come for the chicken. Is this how you stay out of family conflict? No. This is how I arrive hungry. I agreed to dinner before I could manufacture another reason not to. Nolan called the next morning and asked if I could look at a former muffler shop in Fairview. The rent was lower than Russ's new rate, and the owner claimed the lifts were included. You want my opinion? I asked. I want a mechanic to inspect the equipment. You know how to inspect a lift. I want another mechanic. It was the closest he had come to admitting he trusted my competence without attaching a complaint to it. I have an hour at 4, I said. The former muffler shop sat behind a grocery store, half hidden by an empty billboard frame. We met a leasing agent named Paula who wore heels unsuited to the broken pavement and described every flaw as flexibility. The building had 2 bays, not 3. One overhead door stuck halfway up. Water stains spread across the office ceiling. The electrical panel had labels written in pencil, several of which said simply, "Old." Nolan walked under the first lift with a flashlight. "Looks decent." I examined a patch of corrosion near one anchor. It needs certification. The owner says it was working when the last tenant left. When was that? Paula checked her tablet. A little over 2 years ago. 2 winters without heat, I asked. The building has tremendous potential. Nolan looked at me. Could you work with it? I'm not working with it. You know what I mean. I'd want both lifts inspected, the roof repaired in writing, and an electrician to confirm the service can handle your compressor and equipment. Paula smiled. Those improvements could be negotiated with a longer term. What kind of term? Nolan asked. 5 years. His expression changed. Outside, he kicked at a chunk of loose asphalt. You hated it before we walked in. I didn't know it existed before we walked in. You barely looked. I looked at the roof, the panel, the anchors, the doors, and the drainage. What did you want me to look at? The possibilities. Possibilities don't keep rain off a customer's transmission. It's less rent. It will cost more to make usable. Maybe I don't need perfect. You need safe. He shoved his hands into his jacket. The weather had turned colder and wind moved through the empty billboard frame with a low whistle. I can't afford Russ's deposit, he said. What about the money you collected? Payroll, parts accounts, the accountant, back utilities. How much do you have? Not enough. Then you can't afford to repair this place either. He looked at the grocery store loading dock. I found another building in Dayton, but it's 40 minutes away. Shay says that defeats the point. What point? Being local. Local to what? He frowned. Customers. Mom. The second word came out quieter. Mom can drive 40 minutes. She won't. That doesn't make it your job to build a life within 10 miles of her. It's easy for you to say that. Because I left? Because leaving doesn't bother you. The wind carried a plastic bag across the lot. It caught on a weed and fluttered there. You think it didn't bother me? You kept doing it. It was my job. You volunteered. So did you. For what? To stay. To be the one Mom called first. To be the one Dad depended on. You wanted that until it cost you something, and now you want me to pay the bill. His face went pale beneath the cold. I had said it too hard. Nolan looked back at the building. Maybe you should go. My hour isn't up. It is now. At Mom's dinner, Aunt Celia arrived wearing purple glasses and carrying a bottle of bourbon in her purse because Mom only served wine and called anything stronger a problem. Shay came alone. Where's Nolan? Mom asked. At the garage. On a Saturday night? He's working. Mom looked at me as if I had scheduled the repair. Celia poured bourbon into her coffee before the chicken reached the table. To subtlety, she said. Mom ignored her. Dinner lasted 11 minutes before the lease came up. Mom began by asking whether I liked living over a washing machine. I said the spin cycle was reassuring. Celia choked on a green bean. Then Mom said, Nolan has found a place, but Dana decided it wasn't good enough. I asked her to inspect it, Nolan said from the doorway. Nobody had heard him enter. He looked exhausted. His work shirt was stained down one side, and there was a fresh cut across his knuckle. Mom stood. I thought you were working. I was. She touched his face. He moved past her and sat beside Shay. I turned down Fairview, he said. Mom looked at me. You see, I didn't make the decision. No, Nolan said. She didn't. It was the first time he had corrected her in my favor. Mom returned to her chair slowly. Nolan took a piece of chicken and ate 3 bites before speaking again. Cal gave notice today. Shay lowered her fork. What? He got an offer from a dealership. Benefits, guaranteed hours. When's he leaving? I asked. End of the month. That gives you time. For what? Hire somebody for a shop that might not exist in December? Mom reached for his hand. Nolan pulled it away. He asked me 2 weeks ago if the lease was secure, he said. I told him yes. The room went still. Shay closed her eyes. I looked at my brother. Why? He stared at his plate. Because I thought you'd change your mind. Nobody moved. Nolan kept his eyes on his plate. The cut across his knuckle opened again when he bent his hand, leaving a dot of blood near his thumb. Shay said, "You lied to Cal, too." "I didn't lie. You told him the lease was secure. I thought it would be. That is not what secure means." Mom leaned forward. He was trying to keep his employee from panicking. By giving him false information, Shay said. He needed time. Celia sipped her coffee. "Time for what?" Mom looked at me. "For Dana to calm down." I set my fork beside my plate. Nolan laughed once, without humor. "There it is." "What?" Mom asked. "The whole plan." "I don't know what you mean. You didn't think I could get a lease." "I never said that. You kept telling me she'd sign. Because I thought your sister loved you." Celia's coffee cup hit the saucer harder than necessary. "Marlene." "What?" "We're all thinking it." "No," Celia said. "You're thinking it loudly enough for everybody." Mom's face flushed. "This is my house, and that remains irrelevant to whether you're being cruel." "Cruel?" "Dana is letting her brother lose his livelihood." "I'm sitting right here," Nolan said. Mom turned to him. "I know, sweetheart." He flinched at the word. I said, "Nolan is not losing his ability to work. He built a business. Then the business has to support itself. It could if you gave him one more year." Shay put down her napkin. "No." Mom stared at her. "Excuse me? I'm not doing another year of this." Nolan's head came up. Shay looked at him. "I'm not saying I'm leaving. I'm saying I won't pretend a renewal fixes anything. You'd still have unpaid accounts, late filings, no reserve, and prices that don't cover labor. I'm working on all of that. You are now. What do you want from me? The truth before it becomes an emergency." Mom reached toward Shay. "Marriage requires grace. So does accountability. You think I don't know that?" Shay's eyes flicked toward me. "I think this family confuses grace with Dana paying the bill." The room became so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycling. Mom drew herself upright. I offered to help. "With your pension," I said. "It's my money and you'll need it. I have a house. You have property taxes, prescriptions, utilities, and a furnace that sounded bad 2 winters ago. It was serviced. By Nolan's customer, in exchange for work Nolan didn't charge enough for." Nolan rubbed both hands over his face. Celia poured more bourbon into her coffee. Mom pointed at her. "Stop doing that at my table. It's medicinal now. This isn't funny." "No," Celia said. "It stopped being funny around the time your son admitted he planned his employee's future around your daughter surrendering." Nolan pushed back from the table. "I'm done." Shay caught his wrist before he could stand. "Sit." He looked at her hand, then at her face. "Please," she added. He sat. Mom said, "I can cover the deposit. At least let me do that." Nolan shook his head. "You don't know how much it is. I'm not taking your retirement money." "You took mine," I said. The sentence left before I decided whether to say it. He looked at me. "That was different." "How?" "You were earning. And Mom isn't. She can't make it back." Neither of us spoke. Nolan's face changed as he heard the rest of his own thought. I had been able to make it back. That was why my money had felt endless. Not because it cost me nothing, but because everyone assumed I could absorb the cost and keep moving. Mom rushed in. "He doesn't mean it that way. I know exactly how he means it." "I meant you had options," Nolan said. "I had a paycheck. You had housing. I had a room on base. You traveled. I deployed. I know that. Do you?" His chair scraped the floor as he stood again. "Dad asked me to keep that garage going." Mom closed her eyes. The words seemed to surprise even Nolan. He looked toward her, then back at me. "When?" I asked. "Near the end." "What did he say?" "He said it was my chance. He said I finally had something I was good at and not to waste it. That sounds like Dad. He wanted me to have it. He wanted you to have a future. What's the difference?" "The difference is he didn't sign away mine." Nolan shook his head. "You had a career already. I had a plan. One bay. Fleet work. You knew that. Plans change. Only mine, apparently. Celia said my name quietly, but I held up a hand. Nolan stared at the table. I thought there was room for both of us, I said. That's why I kept paying. Not because Dad loved you more, not because you earned some prize for staying. I thought I was funding a place I could come back to. Mom's eyes filled, which made me angry because I wanted the luxury of being the one who cried. You did come back, she said, to a sign with Nolan's name on it and a Camaro in my bay. That sign was marketing. It was a sentence. Nolan turned toward the hallway. Shay let him go this time. The front door shut hard enough to rattle the glass in Mom's china cabinet. Mom looked at me as if I had thrown him through it. Happy now? Celia stood so abruptly her chair tipped backward. Don't, she said. Mom's mouth trembled. I'm trying to save his business. You're trying to save him from finding out whether he can. And you're encouraging her to abandon him. I'm encouraging you to stop calling Dana's boundary abandonment because it scares you. Mom started clearing plates. Everyone can leave. Marlene, I mean it. Shay gathered her purse. At the door, she touched my shoulder. He heard you. That doesn't mean anything changes. No, but he heard you. Outside, Celia lit a cigarette beneath the porch light. I thought you quit, I said. I quit around your mother. That's not quitting. It's geographically limited recovery. We stood beside my van. The replacement mirror looked black under the yellow light. Celia exhaled away from me. Your mother made staying into a religion after your father got sick. I noticed. Nolan became proof she hadn't been abandoned. And I became what? The person strong enough to blame. I leaned against the van, then moved when my shoulder protested. I had strained it years earlier lifting a wheel assembly wrong during a rushed repair. It rarely bothered me unless I was tired, which meant it bothered me often. Celia noticed. You all right? Fine. You do that too. What? Answer before checking. I rolled my shoulder carefully. I'm tired. Better? She crushed the cigarette beneath her shoe. You were right in there. That sounds ominous. You were also trying to make every true sentence hurt exactly as much as you hurt. I looked toward Mom's front window. Her silhouette moved behind the curtains. You think I should renew? No. Then what? I think the lease is a decision. The rest is a wound. Try not to use one to operate on the other. Did you rehearse that? On the drive from Indiana. She hugged me before I could object. Celia smelled like bourbon, smoke, and Mom's lavender hand soap. Your apartment really over a laundromat? Yes, I want to see it. No, then I'll follow you. She did. Mike from the plumbing company called me the next Tuesday. He had 2 vans needing oil service and wanted them done after hours. Nolan's backed up, he said. Then schedule when he's available. There was a pause. I heard he might be closing. He's open until November 30th. Your setup is mobile, though. Yes, so you can do them here. I knew what the job would pay. I needed the money. One of my tires was losing air slowly, and my folding bins were already splitting at the handles. Have you paid Nolan's outstanding invoices? I asked. That's between me and him. Then your vans are between you and him, too. Business is business, Dana. Exactly. He called Nolan that afternoon and paid the remaining balance. Nolan sent me a text. I don't know whether to thank you or be annoyed. Try both. He replied, efficient. Cal's final week changed the rhythm of the garage. Nolan stopped accepting transmission rebuilds and anything likely to remain disassembled past the deadline. He raised his labor rate by $15 an hour. 2 customers complained. 1 walked out. 3 paid without comment. Cal packed his personal tools into a red chest and hired a flatbed to move it. I arrived to return a work order Nolan had left in my van after helping with the mirror. Cal was tightening straps when I pulled in. Dealership starts Monday, he said. You feel good about it? I feel 58. That wasn't the question. It's the answer. Nolan stood near the office, hands in his pockets. Cal looked at him. He'll land somewhere. I know, I said. You always know things. Apparently. Cal climbed into the flatbed cab, then leaned back out. For what it's worth, your brother is the best natural mechanic I've worked beside. Nolan looked away. Cal added, worst man with an invoice. That's improving, I said. Miracles happen. After the truck left, the empty space where Cal's chest had stood looked larger than the chest itself. Nolan handed me the work order. Mike paid. I heard. He said you refused the work. I did. You needed it. So did you. He studied me. Why? Because I won't complain that you erased me and then help erase you. His eyes moved toward the third bay. The Camaro was gone. So were the fishing rods and kayak. My workbench had been scrubbed clean. The bay stood open beneath the bright lights, exactly as I had imagined it for years. I cleared it, he said. I walked to the red line at the entrance but did not cross. I see that. You can use it until the lease ends. No strings, no renewal. The offer hurt more than the refusal had. Thank you, I said. You're still going to Renee's. Yes. He nodded as if he had expected nothing else. Mom came to my apartment that evening carrying Dad's old card table. Mine, she said, looked unsafe. I let her replace it because refusing would have been theater. She walked through all 3 rooms without taking off her coat. This is smaller than your quarters overseas, she said. You never saw my quarters overseas. I saw pictures. You saw the corner I cleaned before video calls. She stopped at the dresser. Dad's ribbon-cutting photograph stood there in its silver frame. Mom picked it up and traced the edge with one finger. You should have been in this. I was. She looked closer. Where? On the office counter, behind somebody's soda cup. Mom stared at the photograph a long time. I thought you were happy for him, she said. I was. She set the frame down carefully. That's what none of you understand, I said. I was happy for him. She looked around my nearly empty apartment, at the mattress, the folding chair, the cardboard boxes I had not unpacked. Then she said, 1 year would give him time. There it was. I opened the door. Mom's face hardened. You won't even discuss it? We just did. She walked past me into the hallway. At the top of the stairs, she turned. You care more about being right than being family? I held the door with one hand. No, Mom. I finally understand that you only called me family when I was useful. Mom stared at me from the top of the stairs. That's a terrible thing to say. It was a terrible thing to learn. I came here to help you. You came here to ask me for another year. I brought you a table. Those aren't the same thing. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. The laundromat dryers turned below us, a steady mechanical tumble under the silence. Finally, she said, Keep the table. Then she walked down the stairs without touching the handrail. I closed the door and stood with my forehead against it. Dad's table occupied half the kitchen. He had used it for card games, tax forms, Christmas puzzles, and once for rebuilding a carburetor after Mom banned him from doing it on the dining room table. One corner still had a black crescent where cleaner ate through the finish. I sat there until the dryer stopped. Mom did not call for 9 days. She did tell Celia, who called me on the 10th. Your mother says you accused her of loving you only for money. That's not what I said. What did you say? I told her. Celia inhaled slowly. That's worse. Thank you. Not less true, just more efficient. I'm busy. Good. Busy people are famous for emotional stability. I hung up on her, which probably proved her point. Work filled the space Mom left. Beth added the monthly inspection of Willow Creek's maintenance pickup. Mike paid Nolan's final balance and then called me again. This time, I serviced 2 plumbing vans in his parking lot under a security light that shut off every 6 minutes. Mike followed me around with a clipboard. Do I get a discount for paying in advance? No. For bringing both vans at once? No. For being handsome? I charge extra for unsupported claims. He laughed and paid the full invoice before I left. Renee gave me Tuesday evenings after her alignment technician decided he preferred overtime only when someone else was doing it. She also found 2 steel shelving units at an equipment auction and sold them to me for what she claimed was cost. You added $20, I said. Delivery fee. They were already in your truck. Convenience fee. I unloaded them. Fitness fee. I paid her because the shelves were worth it and because arguing had become part of the price. The van began to look like a service vehicle instead of a badly organized burglary. Sockets went in labeled drawers. Fluids rode in bins with retaining bars. The folding table fit against the wall. I ordered permanent lettering but delayed installation because the estimate made my left eye twitch. My shoulder hurt more often. I iced it in the apartment at night and ignored it during work, which was an old habit wearing civilian clothes. Nolan texted occasionally. The accountant filed the oldest return. Mike paid, but you know that. Lost the radiator job because I quoted actual labor. Your fault. I answered the last one. Did you lose it or avoid losing money? He replied with a photograph of his middle finger, nearly identical to Shay's. They were still living together. According to Shay, they now held a business meeting every Wednesday at their kitchen table. She kept minutes because Nolan had attempted to redefine 3 decisions before the first meeting ended. He hates it, she told me. Is it helping? He hates that, too. The garage began closing at 6 instead of 8. With Cal gone, Nolan could no longer keep 2 bays moving by himself. He hired a part-time mechanic for 1 week, then let him go after the man installed brake pads backward, and blamed the lighting. The 3rd bay remained empty. Every time I passed on Route 6, the overhead door was down. I wondered whether Nolan kept it clear because he thought I might still use it, or because filling it again would feel like an admission. He called me at 10:40 on a Thursday night. I need a second set of hands. I'm at Renee's. I know, I called there first. I looked across the shop. Renee stood in the office doorway holding her phone. He sounds desperate, she said. I enjoyed it. What happened? I asked Nolan. Rear differential on the Mercury wagon. I've got the assembly balanced, but the jack's leaking down. Lower it. I can't get the left mount aligned alone. Then support it and wait until morning. The customer needs it for work. That isn't an emergency. It is to him. I checked the clock. My scheduled time ended at 11. I still needed to clean the lift. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Thank you. My rate is $75 an hour. He went quiet. Seriously? Yes. You're charging me? You need a mechanic. I need my sister. Your sister is a mechanic who's been working since 7 this morning. Another pause. Fine, he said. 75. Renee tossed me a clean rag. Boundaries are sexier with invoices. I'm going to pretend you didn't say that. You're welcome. The Mercury sat in the first bay with its rear end raised. Nolan had placed jack stands under the frame and a transmission jack beneath the differential housing. The jack had drifted down half an inch, just enough to turn a lineman into a wrestling match. He had done the right thing by stopping. I hated how relieved I was. You look terrible, he said. You called me. He handed me safety glasses. Fair. We repositioned the jack, added a support, and raised the housing in controlled increments. Nolan worked on the left mount while I watched the lines and the angle. Half-inch up, he said. Quarter. Half. You want to pinch the brake line? He looked, swore, and shifted it clear. Quarter, he said. We moved together without needing much language. Years earlier, before the garage became a symbol and before Dad got too sick to stand at a lift, the 3 of us had worked like that on Mom's Buick. Dad called out instructions. Nolan reached the impossible bolts. I kept the sequence straight. For 20 minutes, I could almost feel the old shape of us around the empty space. The mount slid into place. Nolan started the bolts by hand and leaned his forehead against the axle housing. There. He looked at me through the gap. You still fast, you still try to lift things at the wrong angle. It worked. Because I came. He rolled out from under the vehicle. And now I'm paying you. Yes. That makes it healthy? It makes it clear. He sat on the floor with his back against the tool cabinet. Sweat had darkened his shirt collar despite the cold. I told Mom to stop calling you about the lease. When? After dinner. She came to my apartment. I know. I told her not to. She brought Dad's table. That thing weighs 100 pounds. Who helped her? Probably Celia. Celia would have dropped it on purpose. I sat on an overturned bucket. Nolan picked at the cut on his knuckle, now scabbed. I'm not asking you to renew, he said. Okay, I'm not asking you to co-sign. Okay, you could react more. I'm listening. I hate when you do that, I know. He looked toward the third bay. It was visible through the open space between the lift columns, bright and empty. I cleared it because I should have cleared it before you got home. Thank you. Not because I thought it would change your mind. I didn't think it did. I did. A little. There it was. I rubbed my shoulder. Nolan noticed. You hurt yourself? Old injury. From what? Wheel assembly. When? Qatar. He frowned. You never told me. I did. No, you didn't. You made a joke about military health care and asked if I could send money for Mom's transmission. His face went still. I don't remember that. I do. The heater clicked on, blowing warm, dusty air across the bay. Nolan stared at his hands. I'm sorry, it was small. No speech, no excuse attached. I let it stay that size. Thank you. He pulled himself up. Let's finish. We torqued the mounts, checked the brake lines, topped the differential, and lowered the mercury. Nolan road tested it while I cleaned the floor. When he returned, he wrote me a check at the office desk. You can just transfer it, I said. You'd probably want a record. I do. I know. The amount was $150 for 2 hours, exact to our agreement. I folded the check and put it in my pocket. Nolan leaned back in the squealing chair. Cal called me. How is he? Bored. Dealership has him doing recall work. He's been there 4 days. He likes being miserable early. He learned from the best. Nolan smiled faintly. He said the city fleet garage is hiring. I waited. Better money than the dealership. Pension. 4-day schedule. That sounds solid. It sounds like giving up. On what? This. He gestured beyond the office toward the lifts, the workbench, the sign above the doors. You might have to give up this building. Same thing. No. You keep saying that like there's a difference. There is. Your skill doesn't belong to the garage. He looked away. Easy for you, he said. You've got the Air Force on your resume. People see that and assume you know what you're doing. Some people see it and assume I traveled. He had the decency to look embarrassed. I continued. A job doesn't erase the business. It gives you income while you decide what comes next. Working for somebody else? Yes. With policies. Probably. And supervisors. Almost certainly. That sounds awful. It sounds like you might file something on time. He threw a pen at me. It missed and landed in the trash can. We both looked at it. Maybe I'm ready for management, he said. I laughed, and this time it didn't hurt. The next morning, Mom called while I was under a Willow Creek van. My furnace is making a noise. What kind? A banging. Did you turn it off? It's cold. Turn it off and call the service company. Nolan is busy. I didn't tell you to call Nolan. You know who handles these things. Yes. A licensed HVAC technician. She went silent. Dana, I can't afford some emergency rate. I slid out from under the van. Beth stood 10 feet away, reviewing my last report. What do you want me to do? I asked. You know how machines work. I don't service furnaces. But you know whether people are cheating me. There it was again. Not love exactly, but faith in my competence when it could be converted into help. I'll text you the number of a company Renee trusts, I said. Ask for an estimate before work starts. You won't come? No. What if it's dangerous? Then you need someone qualified, not your daughter standing beside it. Her voice sharpened. Family comes when family calls. I came home, Mom. You just didn't leave room for me. I ended the call and lay back under the van. Beth crouched beside the bumper. You need a minute? No. That answer seems automatic. I looked at her. She held out a coffee. I took it. The permanent lettering arrived that afternoon. Renee helped me apply it in the parking lot, mostly by criticizing my measurements. Dana Mercer Mobile Fleet Service ran in dark blue along both sides. I had used my first name because Mercer by itself no longer felt specific enough. On Friday, Nolan taped a white sheet of paper inside the garage window. Last day of regular service, November 22nd. He sent me a photograph without comment. I stared at it for a long time before typing, "Are you applying for the fleet job?" His answer came a minute later. "Interview Monday. Don't congratulate me." I wrote back, "Wear a clean shirt." He replied, "That's basically congratulations from you." Nolan wore a clean shirt. He appeared at Bishop Fleet 40 minutes before his interview in a pale blue button-down that fit across the shoulders and nowhere else. The collar was too tight, the sleeves were too short, and a thread hung from one cuff. Renee looked up from balancing a tire. Court date? Job interview, same shirt either way? Nolan ignored her and found me under the hood of a delivery van. What do I say when they ask why I'm closing the shop? The truth. That's terrible interview advice. What answer were you planning? Lease ended. It did. They'll ask why I didn't renew. Because the business couldn't qualify. That makes me sound incompetent. It makes you sound like somebody who learned something. I'd rather sound competent. Then talk about the things you're competent at. He glanced at Renee, who was very obviously listening. What if they ask about paperwork? Say you're excellent at following established maintenance systems. That sounds like a lie. It becomes a lie if you don't follow them. Renee called across the shop. Tell them your weakness is underpricing labor. Nolan pointed at her. I don't even know you. I know your sister. Same thing, but louder. He looked down at his shirt. Does this look bad? Yes, I said. Really? The cuff is unraveling. I meant generally. You look like you borrowed a shirt from someone with shorter arms. I borrowed it from Mike. That explains the cuff. Renee disappeared into the office and came back with a pair of scissors. She cut the loose thread and adjusted Nolan's collar with the blunt efficiency of someone preparing a body for identification. Go, she said, and don't tell them you hate supervisors. I wasn't going to. You were thinking it loudly. He left, muttering. The interview lasted 70 minutes. Nolan did not call afterward, and I refused to call him. At 6, while I was driving to Willow Creek, he sent one message. Probably blew it. I waited until I parked. Why? Told them their current coolant interval is too long. Did they ask? Eventually, I typed, "That is not automatically bad." He replied, "The fleet manager stopped taking notes. That might be bad." 2 days later, the city offered him the job. He called from the garage office. I could hear the chair squeak. 4 10-hour days, he said. Probation for 6 months. Uniform allowance. They cover certifications. Congratulations. I told you not to do that. You waited 2 days. The restriction expired. The pay's less than I made in a good month. How many good months did you have last year? Don't ruin this. I'm not. He was quiet. They want me to start December 2nd. That gives you 1 day after the lease ends. I noticed. Are you taking it? Shay thinks I should. What do you think? I think I built something for 6 years, and now I'm going to punch a clock. You punched a clock at your own shop. You just forgot to charge for the hours. That sounded rehearsed. It was. He laughed softly. I have until Friday, he said. Then use until Friday. A landscaping company called Hollis Grounds wanted me to service 11 trucks before the first snow. The owner, Dennis Hollis, wanted the work performed indoors, during business hours, and at a rate that assumed I had no expenses. I said no. He called back with a better rate and the same impossible schedule. Renee had no open daytime bay. Willow Creek's lot was full. The third bay at Nolan's garage sat empty and available until the lease ended. I drove past it twice. Then I called Dennis and offered Saturday and Sunday inspections at his yard, weather permitting. He complained about the cold. I told him his trucks already lived outside. He accepted. The job took 19 hours over 2 days. By Sunday evening, my hands felt thick inside my gloves, and my shoulder burned from my neck to my elbow. I found 3 failing batteries, 2 leaking wheel cylinders, and a cracked serpentine belt that Dennis insisted could last another month. It might, I said. Might? It might also leave your plow truck blocking a loading dock in a snowstorm. You military people always think everything's a crisis. No, we think small failures become crises when ignored. He approved the belt. The invoice covered my rent, insurance, and the new tires the van could no longer wait for. It did not cover the feeling in my shoulder. Renee watched me struggle to lift a battery from the floor the following Tuesday and took it from my hands. I had it. You had a stupid expression. I'm fine. You're favoring the left. Old injury. So you've said. I know how to manage it. By pretending it belongs to somebody else? I looked at her. She set the battery on the bench. You can be competent and injured at the same time. Annoying, but legal. I scheduled an appointment at the Veterans Clinic before I could talk myself out of it. At the garage, Nolan posted the city job offer beside the closing notice. Not for customers, for himself. He signed it Friday. Shay sent me a photograph of him holding the pen. He looks constipated, she wrote. That's his responsible face. He has one? New. The last week of regular service became busier than any week since I came home. Customers who had postponed repairs suddenly wanted Nolan to fit them in before the doors closed. He turned down 2 engine replacements, 4 transmissions, and a man who wanted a full restoration, completed by Thanksgiving. I've been asking him for 3 years, Nolan told me. Now it's sentimental. He accepted brake jobs, oil leaks, and anything he could finish in a day. The higher labor rate remained posted at the counter. Nobody died from it. I went to the garage to finalize the equipment list. The blue tape had collected dust and fingerprints. All 23 marked items remained where I had tagged them. Nolan had not used the refrigerant machine after I marked it, though the season barely required it. The lift and compressor still had no tape. You never decided on those, he said. I did. He leaned against the workbench. I'm not relocating. They're yours. His expression closed. I said, I don't want favors. It's not a favor. What is it? You're part of the original investment. My part was labor, remember? Yes. So now you're paying me for work I did on my own business? I'm recognizing that you did build something here. He stared at me. I continued before either of us could make the moment larger. The lift costs too much to remove and store. The compressor is 6 years old. You can sell them, put them in storage, or donate them to somebody who will send you a thank you note. You could sell them. I could. You need the money. Yes. Then why leave them? Because I'm taking what I need to work. You'll need something to start again if you ever choose to. He walked around the lift column and examined the base plate, as if ownership had changed the bolts. I might sell them, he said. They'll be yours. You won't complain later? No. Can I get that in writing? I smiled despite myself. Absolutely. Frank Delaney arrived while we were reviewing the list. He carried a pie in a plastic container and set it on the counter. My wife made this, he said. Peach. It's November, Nolan said. She freezes them. Frank looked at me. His usual warmth was absent. Heard you're the reason this place is closing. Nolan straightened. I said, the lease is ending. That's what I said. No, Nolan said. It isn't. Frank turned to him. Nolan rubbed his thumb over the edge of the inventory sheet. Dana paid the lease, he said. I couldn't take it over. Frank's face shifted. You paid her back, though. No, not at all. Some, not enough. Frank glanced at me, then at the floor. I didn't know. I didn't tell you, Nolan said. Frank looked older than he had at the anniversary party. Well, he said, still seems like family ought to help family. She did. The words were quiet. They stopped me more effectively than if he had raised his voice. Nolan picked up the pie. You want coffee? Frank nodded. The conversation moved on because ordinary life is rude that way. Nolan cut the pie with the same plastic cake knife Mom had left after the anniversary. Frank complained about his knees. I continued checking serial numbers while trying not to react to 4 words I had wanted for 6 years. Recognition did not reopen the lease. It did make the room feel less crooked. Mom invited us to Thanksgiving in a group message. Nolan said yes. Shay said yes. Celia responded with a turkey emoji and a bottle emoji. I stared at the screen for 15 minutes before typing that I would come. I arrived with rolls from Joe's restaurant purchased at full price. Mom opened the door and looked at the permanent lettering on my van. You put your first name on it? Yes, it's very large. Road visibility. She moved aside. The house smelled like sage, onions, and furniture polish. Dad's card table was missing from the living room, leaving a clean rectangle in the carpet. Mom had set 5 places at the dining table and 1 at the end on a folding television tray. For the serving dishes, she said when she caught me looking. I had not asked. Nolan came in carrying sweet potatoes. He wore the city fleet jacket they had given him for orientation, though the tags were still attached inside. Mom touched the embroidered emblem. They gave you a uniform already? Jacket. So this is definite? I signed. Her smile faltered. You can still change your mind. I'm not going to. You haven't even started. That's usually how accepting a job works. She looked at me. I was taking the rolls out of their paper bag. What? I asked. Nothing. Celia arrived before Mom could turn nothing into something. She had brought bourbon openly this time. Dinner remained peaceful through the turkey, potatoes, and half the green beans. Then Mom asked whether Russ had found a new tenant. He has 2 people looking, Nolan said. For December 1st? Yes. That's awfully fast. It's his building. Mom cut a piece of turkey into smaller and smaller squares. So that's it. No one answered. She looked at Nolan. You're really letting strangers take over your father's garage. It wasn't Dad's garage. You know what I mean. I know what you keep calling it. Her knife stopped. Nolan set down his fork. Dad never owned it. I didn't own it. Dana leased it. You built it. With her money. And your hands. Yes, both things can be true. Mom looked at me. Did you tell him to say that? Nolan's chair moved sharply against the floor. Stop! The words startled all of us. Mom blinked. I'm defending you. No, you're making me 12. I'm trying to keep this family from falling apart. You keep blaming Dana because then I don't have to admit I screwed up. Shay reached under the table and put her hand on his knee. Mom's eyes filled. She came home and took everything away. No, Nolan said. She came home and stopped paying for it. Mom pushed her plate away. Is this what you wanted? She asked me. No. She gave a broken little laugh. Of course you'd say that. Nolan looked at the rolls, the turkey, the place Dad's voice should have occupied. She wanted 1 bay, he said. I couldn't even give her that. Mom looked at Nolan as if he had spoken in another language. You never said it was one specific bay. Yes, I did, I said. I thought that was an idea. Something you discussed years ago. It was the agreement. Things changed. Nolan let out a tired breath. That's what I told her. Mom turned to him. Because they did. For me, he said, not for her. I assumed Dana would want something larger after the military, something closer to a city. You assumed her plan could move, Shay said, because his couldn't. Mom's face tightened. I don't appreciate being analyzed at my own Thanksgiving table. Celia reached for another roll. Then stop providing such rich material. Celia? What? The rolls are excellent. They're from Joe's, Nolan said automatically. I knew that. You just told Dana they were excellent. They can survive multiple truths. It's a strong roll. I almost laughed. Mom did not. She stood and began carrying serving dishes to the kitchen, although none of us had finished eating. I did the best I could, she said. No one challenged her. That seemed to make her angrier. You all act like I sat down and planned this. Your father was sick. Nolan was falling apart. Dana was gone. I kept everybody moving. You did, I said. She stopped with the gravy boat in her hand. I also did, I added. Her eyes filled again. I can't do this tonight. She took the gravy into the kitchen. A cabinet door closed, then another. Water began running in the sink. Nolan stared at his plate. Celia leaned toward him. "Eat your turkey." He looked up. "That's your contribution? My larger contribution is not following your mother into the kitchen." Shay reached for her wine. I stayed until the dishes were done. Mom washed. I dried. We passed plates between us without speaking. The rhythm was familiar enough to be dangerous. When I was 12, she had washed and I had dried every night while Nolan escaped to the garage with Dad. Mom used to complain that men always found mechanical emergencies when there were dishes. I wondered when she had started treating those same escapes as proof of devotion. When the last plate was stacked, she pulled the stopper from the sink. "You should take leftovers." "No, thank you. You'll just eat something out of a machine. I own groceries. You always take everything as criticism." I folded the dish towel over the oven handle. "Good night, Mom." She kept her back to me. "Did you ever think that sending money made it hard for us to know what you needed?" I stopped. "You could have told us you wanted more," she said. "I told you I wanted a bay." "That's not what I mean." "What do you mean?" She turned. "I don't know, Dana. I don't know what you wanted from me." The answer was so simple I couldn't say it without sounding 8 years old. I put on my coat. Behind me, Mom said, "I'm not the villain you've decided I am. I didn't decide you were a villain. What did you decide?" "That I can't keep paying for a place in this family." I left before she could answer. Nolan was waiting beside my van. "Can you help Saturday?" he asked. "With what?" "Everything." I looked past him at his truck. Shay sat inside watching us through the windshield. "What time?" 7. I have Willow Creek at 1. We'll be done by then." "No, we won't." He nodded. 7 anyway." 7 anyway. The garage looked different without customer vehicles. Nolan had raised all 3 doors despite the cold. Pale morning light stretched across the concrete. For the first time, I could see from the front entrance all the way to the stained back wall without an engine, tool cart, or person interrupting the view. Shay had brought labels, packing tape, and breakfast sandwiches. Nolan had brought no boxes. "I thought we had boxes," he said. "We did," Shay replied. "You filled them with receipts." Cal arrived at 7:30 in his dealership uniform carrying flattened cartons and a pry bar. "You're late," Nolan said. "I don't work here. That excuse is going to ruin you." Cal looked around the empty bays. Place echoes. "Thank you, Cal," Nolan said. "That helps." We started with the office. Shay boxed customer records and accounting files. Nolan kept trying to put miscellaneous items into one container until she took the marker away from him. "There will be no other box," she said. "What about things that are other?" "Name them." That defeats the category. Cal packed spare parts by system. I removed the diagnostic scanner and battery tester, peeled away the blue tape, and loaded them into the van. The adhesive left sticky rectangles on their cases. Nolan watched from the office doorway. "You can take the jacks today, too. I'll get them after Willow Creek. I can bring them. They're heavy." He looked offended. "I know they're heavy." "That's why I offered. My shoulder's been bothering me." His expression changed. "How bad?" "I have an appointment." "When?" "Next week. You should have said something." "I did." He looked down. "Right." By 10, the first bay was bare except for the lift. The second held the compressor and tire machine. Nolan had sold the tire machine to a repair shop 20 miles north. The owner was collecting it that afternoon. The lift and compressor had become Nolan's the moment I signed the transfer sheet. I assigned them a token value because the form required one. Nolan read it twice. $1. You complained when things weren't invoices. This feels sarcastic. It's legally clear. Can I pay you the $1 now? No, I want monthly installments. He smiled. A used equipment buyer had offered enough for the lift and compressor to cover Nolan's storage unit, the accountant, and a modest reserve after the shop closed. Nolan had resisted selling them until Shay asked whether he wanted equipment or options. He chose options. Men from the equipment company arrived at 11 and began dismantling the lift. I watched them remove the arms, disconnect the hydraulic lines, and loosen the anchors I had paid to install. One of them called the lift a decent old unit. I wanted to tell him it wasn't old. 6 years was not old. 6 years was one overseas assignment, one illness, one funeral, a marriage, 7 repayments, and 1,000 conversations in which I said yes before anyone finished asking. Instead, I told him the hydraulic seal on the right carriage had been replaced the previous spring. He marked it on his sheet. At 12:30, I left for Willow Creek. When I returned after 5, the lift was gone. 4 dark holes remained in the floor where the posts had stood. Nolan was kneeling over them with a bucket of patching compound. Russ said, "Fill the anchors," he said. I changed into work gloves and mixed the next batch. We patched the floor together. Nolan filled too high. I scraped it level. He told me concrete shrank. I told him that did not justify building tiny mountains. Shay brought pizza at 8. We ate on overturned buckets because all the chairs were packed. Cal had gone home. The compressor was gone, leaving a clean rectangle against the wall and a brighter patch of paint behind it. Nolan chewed a piece of crust and looked toward the office. City orientations Monday. I know, they assigned me preventive maintenance. You'll be good at it. You're not going to make a joke? I have several. They're too easy, Shay said. He bought a planner. I stared at Nolan. It came with the job, he said. You bought colored tabs, she added. They were on sale. I pressed a hand to my chest. Dad should be here. Nolan threw a napkin at me. The laughter faded naturally. It did not leave silence behind so much as reveal it. Shay folded her pizza plate in half. I'm going to move the last household stuff, she said. You two finish the cabinets? Nolan nodded. She kissed him before leaving. Their marriage had not returned to normal. It had become more deliberate. Shay asked questions. Nolan answered some quickly and some after walking around the block. They were no longer mistaking comfort for trust. We moved the last metal cabinet into his truck. Behind it, folded against the wall, was Dad's green camp chair. The fabric had faded along one edge. One rubber foot was missing, and the cup holder contained 3 washers, a dead pen, and a peppermint still twisted in cloudy plastic. Nolan opened the chair. It listed slightly to the right. Dad sat in this during the electrical work, he said. I remember. He sat in it during everything. He was supervising. He was dying. The words came without drama. Nolan ran his hand over the back of the chair. Dad had grown weaker, faster than any of us admitted. At first he sat because he liked telling us what to do. Later he sat because standing cost too much. In the photographs, that progression was obvious. In our memory, we had edited it into personality. You take it, Nolan said. You found it. You have the ribbon-cutting picture. You have the office picture. That isn't how inheritance works. It seems to be how ours works. He smiled faintly. Take the chair. I folded it and put it in the van. Sunday was for cleaning. Nolan scrubbed oil stains with absorbent powder. Shay washed the office walls. I repaired a damaged outlet cover in the 3rd bay and removed the last hooks from the pegboard. The tool silhouettes remained in dust. Wrenches, pliers, hammers, each outlined by 6 years of air that had failed to reach the paint behind them. Frank brought coffee. Mike brought a floor machine from the plumbing company warehouse and stayed 2 hours. Joe arrived with sandwiches that Nolan tried to pay for. Your credit is no good here, she said. He accepted the food. Nobody made a speech. Nobody lined up to praise anyone. People came, worked, said goodbye, and left with dirty hands. Mom did not come. At 4, Nolan climbed a ladder and removed his sign. The first screw came easily. The second had rusted. I held the ladder while he leaned too far to one side. Come down, I said. I've got it. You're overreaching. Story of my life. The screw snapped. Nolan stared at the broken head. I'm going to pretend that was the plan. With enough confidence, it becomes family history. He looked down at me. That was good. Thank you. We lowered the sign together. Up close, the white aluminum was scratched around the edges. Nolan Mercer's Motorworks filled almost the entire panel. Foreign and domestic, honest work at a fair price ran along the bottom. Fair to everybody except you, he said. And you. He set the sign face down inside his truck. The blank strip above the doors was a different shade from the rest of the building. For 6 years, the sun had faded everything around it. On the 29th, I returned alone to finish the office. Nolan had taken his tools home. Shay had packed the records. The squealing chair was gone, purchased for $5 by Cal after he said every dealership needed one piece of furniture that sounded like regret. I wiped the desk, cleaned the coffee machine, and removed Dad's photograph from the wall where Nolan had temporarily placed it. I set it in the box marked Nolan, personal. The renewal packet waited in my apartment, unsigned. I had kept it through the motel, the move, the van repairs, the arguments, and every call from Mom. I told myself it was because I retained business records for 7 years. That night, I put it on Dad's card table. The yellow tabs were gone. The signature lines remained empty. I sat across from the packet in the same camp chair Dad had used at the garage. The missing rubber foot made it rock each time I shifted. At 11:50, Nolan texted, "You going tomorrow?" "Yes." "Want help?" I looked at the unsigned pages. "Yes," I wrote. At 7 the next morning, the garage was cold enough for our breath to show. Russ planned to meet us at 9 for the final walkthrough and keys. Nolan brought coffee. I brought the last cleaning supplies. Neither of us mentioned that we had arrived 2 hours early. We opened all 3 bay doors. The concrete stretched empty beneath the fluorescent lights. No Camaro, no fishing rods, no cabinets, no lift, no sign. Just the red line across the floor and 4 dark circles where the anchor holes had been patched. Nolan stood in the 3rd bay. "I should have done this before you got home," he said. A car turned off Route 6. Gravel snapped beneath its tires. Mom's Buick stopped outside the open middle door. Mom got out carrying a paper grocery bag. She stood beside the Buick with the bag held against her coat, looking through the open doors at the empty building. "I brought donuts," she said. Nolan glanced at me. "What kind?" he asked. "Assorted. That means half powdered. You like powdered. When I was 15. Mom's face tightened. People can still like things. He walked out and took the bag from her. "Thanks." She followed him inside. Her shoes made small, hard sounds on the concrete. At the red line, she stopped and looked toward the 3rd bay. "I didn't know it was this empty." "That's generally what a move-out looks like," Nolan said. "You didn't have to take everything. I took my tools." "What about the lift?" "Sold." "The compressor?" "Also sold." She looked at me. "You let him sell those?" "They were his. You paid for them. I gave them to him." Mom seemed unable to find the accusation that fit all 3 facts. Nolan opened the donut bag on the windowsill. "Russ will be here at 9. "I know. How?" "I called him." I turned. "Why?" I wanted to know if there was still time. "Mom," Nolan said, "I didn't ask him to do anything improper. I asked whether the lease could be renewed." "What did he say?" I asked. "That it would require your signature. It won't have it. I understand that now." The answer was quieter than I expected. Mom walked into the 3rd bay. Without the Camaro, cabinets, and kayak, there was nothing to distract from its size. The eastern wall was marked where my planned workbench had stood. Sunlight came through the side door window and fell across the patched floor. She touched one of the empty hooks on the pegboard. "You really thought you'd work here?" I stared at her. "Yes. I thought the garage was something you did for Nolan." "It was. It was also something I did for myself. You never talked about it like that. I talked about fleet accounts, equipment, the side access. I sent you the layout for this bay. I thought you were helping him plan." "No, you heard me helping him plan." Mom closed her hand around the hook. Nolan said, "She told us." Mom looked at him. "We didn't listen," he added. She turned back toward the wall. "I saw you here every day," she said to him. "I saw your hands split in the winter. I saw you come home after midnight. I knew what you gave because it was in front of me." Nolan folded the top of the donut bag closed. Mom looked at me. "Your money arrived. The bills got paid. You sounded calm on the phone. I decided that meant it was easy." "It wasn't." "I know." No, Mom. You know now. She nodded. The heater came on, rattling once through the ductwork before settling. For years, I had paid that gas bill without knowing what the building sounded like when it warmed. Mom rubbed her thumb along the metal hook. I made staying look like love, she said, and leaving look like selfishness. Nolan looked down. Because I needed staying to mean something, she continued. After your father died, I didn't know what to do with a daughter who could live without me. I wasn't living without you. You were living where I couldn't reach you. You could reach me. You usually did when something needed paying. She flinched, but she did not defend herself. I'm sorry, she said. The words did not change the building. They did not refill my savings account, restore the years, or turn the blank strip above the garage doors into a sign with both our names. They did make the next answer possible. I don't know what to do with that yet. Mom nodded again. All right. An apology isn't a key back into my life. Her eyes moved toward the office door. It's the beginning of learning how to knock, I said. I can do that. I don't know if you can. That's fair. Mom had never called anything I said fair unless she agreed with it. Hearing her accept the word while hurt looked physically difficult. Nolan reached into the bag and handed her a powdered donut. She took it. I brought those for you. You said assorted. He bit into a glazed one. Things change. A small laugh escaped her. It broke halfway through and became something else. She covered her mouth. Nolan looked at me over her bent head. I stepped forward, then stopped. Comfort had become complicated. Mom noticed. She wiped her face with a napkin and straightened. You don't have to take care of me right now, she said. It was the first time she had ever released me from a duty before I performed it. We ate donuts standing in the empty garage. Mom found the powdered one too dry. Nolan gave her half his glazed. I drank coffee and watched sunlight move across the third bay. At 8:30, Mom went outside to sit in the Buick. She said she wanted to give us time before Russ arrived. Nolan and I did one final walk through. The office window locked. The side door latched. The patched outlet cover sat flush. We checked the bathrooms, utility closet, and floor drains. In the back corner, Nolan found one of Dad's peppermints beneath a baseboard heater. He held it up. Think it's still good? It was never good. He put it in his pocket. In the third bay, he stood at the center of the floor and looked up at the lights. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Tell you what? That it cost you that much. I did. You told me amounts. I told you I was taking extra assignments. I told you I postponed buying a house. I told you I needed you to start covering rent. You never said you were angry. I wasn't at first. You should have yelled. I was calling from work. He rubbed his palms down the front of his jeans. When you sent money, it felt like it came from somewhere else. Not you exactly. The military. Germany. Some account that refilled. It refilled because I kept working. I know. You know now. He nodded. I let Mom tell the story because I liked it, he said. The one where I built this alone. I know. Customers treated me different when they thought I owned it. You could have owned it eventually. I thought I already did. That was convenient. Yeah. He looked toward the front doors. I resented you, too. For leaving. For making it look easy. Dad bragged about you, Mom worried about you, then you'd call and solve whatever problem was happening. I was here doing the ugly parts, and somehow you were still the capable one. You were capable. Not with everything. Nobody is. You acted like you were. I didn't know I was allowed to be anything else. That silenced him. Outside, a truck pulled into the gravel lot. Russ arrived 8 minutes early in a brown jacket and work boots, carrying a clipboard. He did not praise anybody or ask what family disagreement had ended his dependable lease. He inspected the walls, tested the office window, and crouched over the patched lift anchors. This one's a little high, he said. Nolan looked at me. I told you, I said. It shrank unevenly. Concrete targets you personally. Russ glanced between us. You want to grind it down? Yes, I said. No, Nolan said at the same time. Russ stood. It's fine. The walkthrough took 22 minutes. At the end, Nolan placed 2 garage keys on the office counter. Russ counted them and looked at me. That everything? My old key stopped fitting years ago. Nolan reached into the top desk drawer, which was no longer there. His hand closed on air. I left it on the windowsill, I said. We checked. The old brass key still rested beneath the outside sill where I had set it weeks earlier. Dust filled the grooves. I handed it to Russ. He tried it in the current lock and shrugged. No good to me. He offered it back. I closed my fingers around it. Russ signed the inspection sheet and gave me a copy. You were a good tenant, he said, thank you. If your plans change, I've got a smaller unit coming open in the spring. My plans changed enough. Fair. He tucked the clipboard under his arm and left. That was all the authority the moment received. No crowd, no applause. No one declared me right. A man inspected a floor, collected keys, and drove away to meet another tenant. Nolan stood beneath the open middle door. I guess that's it. Almost. We turned off the office light, then the second bay, then the first. I saved the third for last. The fluorescent tubes clicked off in pairs, leaving the bay lit only by the side window. I stood there until Nolan touched my elbow. You ready? No, me neither. We walked outside. Nolan lowered the first door. I lowered the second. The rollers rattled in the tracks, louder in the empty building. At the third door, we each took one side of the handle. Together, we pulled it down. The bottom seal met the concrete with a soft rubber thud. The lease expired at midnight, without my signature ever touching the renewal. Nolan started at the City Fleet garage 2 days later. He disliked the uniform pants, the digital time clock, and a supervisor who required him to record labor in tenths of an hour. He loved the heated floors, the parts inventory, and the fact that every vehicle arrived with a maintenance history. He would not admit the last two things for almost a month. His first repayment arrived on the 15th, $200 transferred with the note, garage. I called him. What is this? A payment. I didn't give you a bill. I know. How did you choose 200? Shay chose it. That sounds right. She has a spreadsheet. Good. Don't sound so happy. Are you sure you can afford it? Yes. That mattered more than the amount. The payments came monthly. Some were 200. One was 75 after Nolan's truck needed a wheel bearing. None came with speeches. I accepted them because refusing would have turned his responsibility into another performance about my generosity. Mom changed less neatly. She called twice without asking for anything, then ruined the third call by mentioning that Nolan's work schedule made it difficult for him to help with the gutters. I said she should hire someone. She started to argue, stopped, and asked whether I knew a reputable company. I can recommend one, I said. That would be helpful. She paid them herself. At Christmas, she asked about my shoulder before asking about the business. I told her physical therapy was helping. She listened without comparing the injury to Nolan's back or Dad's illness. It was a small conversation. Small became the only size I trusted. The one-bay unit beside Bishop Fleet opened earlier than expected. It had a stained concrete floor, one functioning lift, a narrow office, and a garage door that closed without being persuaded. The rent was higher than my apartment and lower than the old 3-bay lease. I ran the numbers 6 times. Then I signed my own name. Renee charged me a neighbor consultation fee of 1 coffee per morning. Beth expanded Willow Creek's contract. Hollis Grounds returned after the first snow took out 2 batteries I had warned Dennis about. Mike paid before service without asking for a handsome discount. The business did not make me rich. It paid its bills, then paid me. That order felt revolutionary. Nolan helped mount the permanent sign above the bay door. Dana Mercer Fleet Service. He stood on the ladder while I checked the level from the parking lot. Left side down, I called. Your left or mine? There's only one left. That's exactly the kind of thing a person with military benefits would say. I threw a shop towel at him. It fell 6 feet short. Mom arrived while we were tightening the final bolt. She parked beside my van and remained outside the open bay. Nolan climbed down. Mom looked at the sign, then at me. Is it all right if I come in? I wiped my hands on a rag. Yes. She stepped across the threshold. Her gaze moved over the lift, the workbench, the labeled cabinets, and Dad's green camp chair in the corner. She did not say the shop was small. She did not mention Nolan's old garage. "What are you working on?" she asked. I showed her the fleet schedule on the wall. She listened. That evening, after they left, I lowered the single garage door and turned off the lights. The new key slid into the lock without resistance. I turned it once and heard the bolt settle into place. Nobody else got to tell me who deserved it.